felt behaving unacceptably, they will be ejected from the meeting by resolution. Thank you for listening. On behalf of the Council, I would like to thank everybody for attending this Town Council meeting. So, first item on the agenda, apologies for absence.
We've got two apologies. Councillor Shah and Councillor Rutland.
Thank you. That's everybody. Okay. Right, disclosure of interests. To deal with any disclosure by members of any disclosable pecuniary interests, an interest other than pecuniary interests as defined under the Seaford Town Council Code of Conduct and the Localism Act 2011 in relation to matters of agenda. Councillor Walraven.
Thank you, Chair. Agenda item 12, Seaford Lifeguards. I'm Vice President of the Seaford Lifeguards.
Duly noted. Thank you very much. Yeah. Public participation. To deal with any questions or brief representations from members of the public in accordance with relevant legislation and Seaford Town Council policy. Right. Would any members of the public like to address the council? Lady in the middle first, please.
Please.
Yes.
I thought he was going to say my name. Do you mind if I stand here?
Whatever's comfortable.
Thank you. I just want. So, good evening, everyone. Good evening, Chair. Due to time constraints, I've edited my statement for reading tonight, but would like to start with agenda item 12, if that's okay. Agenda item 12 is a temporary arrangement for Seaford Lifeguards Hut. I have lived in Seaford for 15 years, been a councillor for 8. I was chair of community services twice. I also know many residents and have worked out in the community, including Seaford Lifeguards Chairman Pete William, who I've known for many years. To read this agenda item shocks me, and there is a clear indication that there has been very little communication with the lifeguards and that they were not consulted or informed that they would not be included in the new Martello build. A full council meeting, 26th of January 23, item 11, Appendix B, shows the lifeguard unit incorporated in the design, but by full council the 20th of July 23, item 12, Appendix A, this has been replaced by a janitor store. There is no mention in the report at the meeting in July 23, so when did this design change and when was it approved by councillors? They would have liked to have been given the opportunity to repurpose their hut, which was purpose-built for them. They do not want to be sited away from the toilets or up by Splash Point. Their original site is the main area of swimming and where they are most needed. 1.4. They cannot even consider a disused Westview beach hut. This is just not strong enough. They need a solid structure and base. Also, their equipment is very expensive and a wooden beach hut would be more susceptible to being broken into. 1.5. This would have to be from a lamppost, like Holy Cow. They cannot use the same lamppost as Holy Cow, so this makes this area totally unsuitable. It also mentions 3 options for fresh water. There seems to be only one water tap, because there seems to be a water tap missing, which was sited near the Martello kiosk where the changing place is now situated. The lifeguards are volunteers and look after visitors, residents and most of all children, keeping them safe throughout the summer. Please will councillors consider incorporating the lifeguards unit into the Martello build as per the approved design. Full council 26th of January 2023. Agenda item 5, 4.1. There is no mention of how many cuts and whether this will include collection of the grass. Community Services meeting on the 7th of March, item 7, 1.2 states the contract will include a minimum of 2 cuts and collects per year. Please can council consider making sure there is a cut and collect in the maintenance contract and if possible to publish the schedule of cuts on their website. 4.10. I'm hoping, councillors, you did receive my email prior to this meeting and did have a chance to see the photos. The long bench is shown in the design that was approved by full council 20th of July 23, item 11. When was this design changed and approved by councillors and why and at what meeting? Please can the 2 small benches be removed and replaced with a long bench on the back wall as per the agreed design by councillors. Agenda item 6, 1.1. STC and LDC are currently engaged in discussions regarding the management of Place Lane toilets. 1.2, councillors and office staff have been inundated with complaints from residents. A visit today showed just how bad the cleaning is and that the disabled toilet was even worse.
30 seconds.
Sorry?
30 seconds.
Okay, I've nearly finished. And not even been included in the refurb done by LGC. Why is there a need to collaborate with LGC on Place Lane toilets? And Place Lane toilets do not belong to STC, whereas South Street toilets do. Please can council confirm what is the decision of the South Street toilets? Will they be closed down? Thank you.
We will answer those questions with you,
Yeah.
if
Or you,
it's
can
okay.
or you can do them by written email if it's easier, I don't mind.
Fine, thank you for your understanding. Who would like to address council next? Gentleman by the door.
Good evening, councillors. I want to talk about agenda item 8, which is the Hope Gap Steps. Since receiving the agenda and looking through it, I've been frantically trying to get information which is not available readily in any council or any council state. Very few people are well informed on the arrangements for managing Seaford Head, which is astonishing given that it's one of Seaford's main assets. The arrangements with the Sussex Wildlife Trust and so on are critical to it, and the appearance somewhere of an overarching management committee which contains umpteen possible bodies, some of which are national, is just confusing the matter. The information I've received suggests that the information in the agenda report is vastly incomplete, probably for historical reasons, I must say, because there's nothing in the council records themselves to say that the council, and particularly the councillors, have ever taken regular notice of what's happening up there. So I think there's a great and disturbing lack of continuity of information about what's happening up there, and that therefore I suggest it is no time now to make any decisions about what should be done, but I urge you to postpone or kick out this agenda report and wait for a new one with some properly informed information feeding in. Thank you.
Gentleman at the back.
Sorry.
Sorry, I thought you were going to take the agenda items in order, but I'm glad you've just spoken to agenda item 8.
No, they take it in order, we don't have to.
We take it in order because we don't have public participation item by item.
Okay.
We do not want to know which item you're talking about, but we don't have a public participation throughout the meeting. This is your chance.
That must be good news. I think the question whether to repair the steps down to Hope Gap is obviously a significant one for several reasons. According to the OS map, the steps down to Hope Gap provide access to the foreshore, which seems to suggest that it represents some kind of continuation of a pre-existing right-of-way down to the beach. As such, it carries, I think, some kind of sense of duty and obligation to responsibility to care for that facility, if you like. It possibly is even a legal obligation. I'm not absolutely sure personally what the status of that is, but that is really behind one of the questions. So to repair the steps is important, to make them as safe as can be reasonably expected in the time, and given obviously the economic constraints that would entail. I think closure of that right-of-way is unacceptable on purely social grounds, in that it would unjustifiably remove the right of access, which I think probably is associated with also a right of tradition, given the ancient, well not ancient, but the age of the facility. So to remove that is not really acceptable, and it's clearly a popularly frequented area of the Seven Sisters overall. In addition, notwithstanding practical and legal matters, the loss of access to Hope Gap, if it were temporary, would of course deprive the public, including international tourists who clearly bring in money into the town, of a popular beauty spot and place of recreational pleasure and enjoyment. In addition, closure would require, I think, clear and possibly expensive notices in other areas further east along the coast to warn any kind of people who like to stroll along the littoral, along the coast at low tide, only sometimes to find themselves to see that the tide has actually come in, because it does go in and it comes out, and they will be stuck. So there ought to be, I think it would entail some kind of possibly quite expensive notification given at the certain areas further up on the east. So I think in a nutshell, I would endorse what we've already heard and ask for clarification and urgent action in terms of giving that facility a really good reparation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Lady on the front row.
Right, I'll stand here too. Hope Gap. Here we are. Beautiful. It's item 8. Hope Gap was closed during the Walk the Chalk event in September last year. Hope Gap steps were found to be unsafe, and there has not been an attempt to fix them. Hope Gap is iconic seascape with a rocky beach just past Seaford Head. Access is by steps leading to the beach. The rock pools at low tide are teeming with sea life. It's a wealth of discovery for many local children. Seaford has 4 primary schools, and there is an opportunity for Southbound to become an education centre. One of my children is now a marine biologist, inspired by childhood experiences exploring rock pools. The steps are a safety point for anybody walking, kayaking or surfing around the river mouth or Seaford Beach. It is a necessary safety access point if cut off by the tide, as we heard earlier. There will be a lot of money spent on rescue missions, as people will get caught. My children and their friends have certainly used the steps for that purpose. People will climb up or down whether the steps are closed or not. Not maintaining the steps will put people at risk. In Beachy Head to Chelsea Bill, it states that funding should be made available for repairs. Is the report. In words of my younger son, I've been seeing so many people almost caught out by the tide when I've been surfing. Me, for one, I probably would have died multiple times if I could not access those steps. And my question to the council is, does the council want to be responsible for that? And has the feasibility study on repairing the steps been completed and costed?
Thank you very much. Anyone else? This gentleman.
Still on item 8.
Also, you know.
Hope Gap steps are a right of way. They should not have been closed. It is unlawful to close a right of way. If you're going to close a right of way, you need special permission, and it's not something you should be able to take on the unilaterally. The way is to an important amenity. That beach is important. Access to that beach is important. This is an area of geological interest, and you can really only see the nature of the cliffs and the geology if you're on the beach. You can't see the loess and so on if you're standing on it. And that's besides the fact that it's rock pooling for children, it's an amenity for local people. And additionally, as was mentioned, Hope Gap is part of Seaford's tourist attraction. It's featured in the film of the same name, it's on Lewis Visit website, it should be open. tourism is important to Seaford, and the council should be supporting tourism. It has been the council's practice to maintain the steps. They should have been maintained before they became dangerous. It was the council's job to keep those steps safe and that right of way open. And they had the money to do it. This year there's a £25,000 budget for open space repairs. Last year it was 20,000. I see from the notes about the finances of this committee that it had a 17,000 surplus. So there's no excuse for what amounts to a dereliction of duty in maintaining those steps and putting people at danger. And just closing them and then pretending that they can stay closed for a couple of years because that'll give us time to think is outrageous.
Gentleman on the end, so it's a confusion.
It's not that way. Yeah, sorry. I'm Tobias Morris and I run Skipper Water Sports. Agenda item 6, 3.13. Create feasibility review in place for both concessions, Boddingstead and Westview Beach Huts, on schedule pop-up concession. Skipper Water Sports is based on the Seaford seafront, offering locals and tourists a safe place for water sports facilities. We also have a cafe and run 100% of solar. We're plastic free and 100% sustainable. We only use sustainable produce and all local produce, including Seaford butchers. We have 4 seasonal staff and plus us too. We did not get enough points on our tender application. However, we believe it was due to our poor writing abilities, as we believe we meet the criteria which includes sustainability and welfare and well-being due to the points above. Is there any workaround or temporary licence or offering to allow us to get back onto the water this summer, as we believe we fulfil a need for local residents, old and young, to get safely? If we're unable to get back onto the water this year, sadly Skipper Water Sports will have to shut and close down forever. Thank you for listening.
Oh, that's dreadful. Well done.
Is there any further comments? Oh, gentleman on the end, sorry.
Item 8 again, Hope Gap. I'm reading on behalf of Miss McIntyre, who couldn't attend the meeting. I'm dismayed to read that the steps leading to Hope Gap are unlikely to be repaired in the foreseeable future. Whilst I understand and indeed have seen the deterioration myself and agree that they are in a state of disrepair, nonetheless I feel the dangers to visitors in the Cookman Valley is far greater by not repairing them. As a walker frequenting the Cookman Valley almost daily, I have on numerous occasions witnessed persons stranded by the incoming tide and being forced to climb the concrete wall in front of the cottages in order to get back safely, and that is quite difficult. I have waited and watched people reach the place of safety in case I needed to call for the Coast Guard, and observing most other people on the beach, they were obviously oblivious to what was going on and that the shore cannot be reached by the incoming tide. If people are not familiar with the area, and most people are not being visitors, the notice at the foot of the cottages stating there's no access at Hope Gap is largely meaningless. Despite knowing the area and checking the tide times before heading out for a walk, I have myself cut it fine. Therefore, it's unsurprising that visitors unfamiliar with the area are unwittingly putting themselves at risk when heading out to explore the rock pools. Lack of direct access to and from Hope Gap via the step is an enormous loss to visitors and locals. In addition to posing a real danger of being stranded for the incoming tide, there is the unquantifiable pleasure and well-being to be had in the peaceful surroundings offered at Hope Gap, a unique and invaluable area ideal for introducing children to learn about rock pools, marine life, geography, geology, climate, history, etc. The list is inexhaustive for a unique education and experience afforded by the area of chalk cliffs around Hope Gap for both children and adults alike. I understand that the revenue received for filming at or around Hope Gap was in excess of 45,000 during 2023 and is currently almost 30,000 for the first 5 months into 2024. Perhaps you could kindly advise if that revenue received for filming in this area is specifically ring-fenced for maintaining this area, as there are no obvious signs of that being the case at the moment. Let not the enormous benefits of access to Hope Gap, an area of outstanding natural beauty, be eroded along with the chalk cliffs. This SSI is for all to enjoy and explore while exercising the deepest respect for the fragility and vulnerability of the landscape. I support the protection of the ISSI in an area of outstanding natural beauty wholeheartedly, but this need not be exclusive of the responsible enjoyment of the area. This is Mr. Matthias.
Thank you. Right. Anyone else? Thank you. Lady at the back.
Hi, in relation to item 10 on the agenda, thank you to Council Officers Louise Lawrence and Sharon Dryden, and also to Chair of Community Services Maggie Wimmer, for submitting this report for your discussion tonight. I've personally put a lot of time into this, and I really hope that it's comprehensive, answers any questions or concerns you might have. But if that's not the case, I am still here for questions. You can email me, and I'm really good at responding. So please don't let the question mark be the barrier to this going forward. I also hope you can see it's not just close friends and family asking for this to be done. There's support from the wider Seaford community, but not just Seaford, even wider than that as well. The design has been chosen because it's inspirational, as well as raising awareness of plastic pollution and commemorating Claire's legacy. Another point I'd just like to raise is that the wording of the location has deliberately been left open. I didn't want to pick a single location and that be the full stop and the point where you say no. So yeah, I'm open to discuss that further and happy to come along and meet or talk further. Thank you.
Thank you. And can I just say that we have had an email communication from Claire Sumner's husband, very much supporting that. I shan't read it out for sake of brevity because the councillors have got copies, but we have acknowledged it and it is supported. Anyone else? Anything else to say? Now is your time. There have been one or two other email communications which councillors have been copied into. So as far as I can tell, everybody with an opinion, written or vocal, has been listened to and noted at least by councillors. So rest assured, we are listening and we are trying to take note of everybody's opinion, because I know there's some quite controversial things on the agenda and we want everybody's opinion in order to make the right decision. Thank you. Right. Okay. Item 4, Community Services Year-End Financial Report. Are you talking to that?
Yeah, I can. Did you want to talk?
Oh,
No? Okay. So, I don't know if you want to, obviously you've got the summary there saying that we got an improvement of 35,000 in the income, and our expenditure went over by 17. Don't know if you want to have a look at the, we'll go into lots of detail, but if you want to look at the pages on 15 through to 17, which is sort of the exception reports, and whether there was anything on there that you particularly wanted to highlight.
We've got plenty of money. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
I think it's down to diligent officer work, applying for grants, running a tight ship, but we're in a favourable position and we've got some wiggle room. Councillor Bristol.
Hi, yeah, thanks. I echo that in the whole, but I'm just wondering, this is obviously the first sort of municipal year that I've been a councillor and come into a future year, if you like. The circa 17,000 expenditure, which is less than in the budget, does that in any way roll over to our committee, or does that go back into the general pot and we just have to stick with what's been budgeted for this year, or what happens to that money going forward?
I can answer that if you want, Chair.
Yes,
surpluses, any surpluses from any committee budget will go back into the general reserves at the end of the year. Similarly, any deficits in committee budgets are funded from the general reserves through the year. Obviously, when councils are setting their budgets, each committee sets its own committee budget. So community services, set the budget for the committee each year, and obviously can be mindful of previous financial performance when they set the budget for the year ahead. So when this committee considers its budget in the autumn, it can be mindful of the previous financial performance in terms of how it wants the budget for the future.
Thank you, that's really useful to know.
Any other comments, questions? I've got a question, if you don't mind. Bearing in mind that the written comments about is there a ring-fenced way of using the filming money that is raised on Seaford Head. I'm looking at the Seaford Head Estate Code 116, page 10. Do we ring-fence that so that the money raised on Seaford Head is spent on Seaford Head, or does it just go into a general pot?
I think it's important to recognise that there is always significant expenditure on Seaford Head Estate as well as income. For example, the maintenance of the Seaford Head Nature Reserve, which is most of Seaford Head, is managed by Sussex Wildlife Trust on behalf of Seaford Town Council, and we pay Sussex Wildlife Trust to do that. And other matters may arise. Up until now, the view of councils has been that if we were to ring fence this money and effectively then spend more money on Seaford Head on top of that, that would in effect cause the precept to increase. In other words, our overall level expenditure would be higher, and the precept would have to fund the difference. So the council tax would go up if we were to use more of that filming money than we are at the moment. But of course, councils may wish to look at it in the future if they wish to consider this differently. That's a decision that councils can take when they're setting the budget each year. But that's how, at the moment, we do pay for expenses such as Sussex Wildlife Trust, and secondly, we use any additional income we're able to raise to minimise the precept for the town.
Thank you. Any further comments, questions? Councillor Hayman.
Sorry, just following on from that. If, when we get to Hope Gap and we say, oh, we want to spend some money repairing it, if we've now approved this agenda item, does this mean we then can't spend any on Hope Gap?
Councillors would have to, that would have to be a decision of full council.
Right, I just
community services could recommend it to full council if they wish to. The spend would have to come from the general reserves.
Yeah, I've got a question, and it relates mostly to the timing of budget preparations and the report here, which obviously is the end of year report, which is great to see. Now, when we set our budgets, and when we start that process, it's actually in the autumn. So it was in the autumn last year, and then we came to, I think it was January or February, where we actually set the budgets finally at full council. Knowing now the entirety of the 23 to 24 financial year, do we or could we have a projected spend against the budget for this year? Because effectively we've had 3 to 6 months where, especially as newer councillors coming in, we haven't sort of seen the way that it ticks over. So where we've now got this 17k effective underspend from last year, which obviously isn't coming forward to our committee but is going forward to council, I would like to get a sense of the trajectory of where we're on so far this year, having that extra data to go into the model, if you like, from that. So it would be really useful to have that kind of information up to date as well, so that we've got the absolute latest snapshot of finances for when we start talking about recommendations for spending on items on this year's budget, if you like.
Through you, Chair. Councillors do have that information. We report quarterly to community services on financial performance through the year. So when you come to set the budget, you'll have the quarters for that year so far when you're setting the budget.
Yeah, I mean actually now we're starting a new year,
yes.
And obviously we're sort of feeding in the information from last year, because we effectively made the decision for this year's budget. We started that process circa 6 months ago, and we sort of concluded it circa 3 months ago. So it's more about sort of seeing where the spend ended up last year and how that would affect our budgeting this year and going forwards into
Okay,
slightly nuanced points.
I understand the question, but as I say, to be clear, councils receive comprehensive financial information such as this one. So this is the variance report showing the full financial year up to the end of last financial year. Obviously, we can't report that sooner than this because the figures are only able to be produced a couple of months after the year end. And we've actually got our internal audit of our figures tomorrow. So councils receive quarterly reports for each committee, variance reports at each of their meetings, plus the year end report 2 months after the year end. So they should be able to use that information to inform themselves for setting their budget. I'm not quite sure what additional information would help.
So what I found really helpful, because obviously I'm relatively new, is that, and this report doesn't show it, is when you get the September for the September meeting, it will have a percentage spend against the budget forecast.
That's what I'm talking
so
about.
So that will be sitting there saying, we're 4 months in.
Intel from last year into that.
We're 4 months in and you've actually spent 50% of your budget already, ouch, or we're 4 months in and you spent 10% of your budget, so all good. So that,
because of course here, I mean, we're not through a full quarter, but we are 2 months in now.
Yes.
So.
And I think it links to when the meetings fall as well, fitting them all in, and I know Georgia works really hard to try and get them spread equally. So it's sometimes not going to exactly match, but the next report definitely does that, and I found that really helpful.
Thank you, that'd be really good.
Okay. Councillor Honeyman?
When you think about it, this report talks about the previous year, as it does, so it's just the year end, it is very difficult to get it dead on, as you know, and I know when you get closer to the end of the year, you will be shifting things around just to try and hurry up certain projects, certain maintenance, which is what you'd expect. So in the scheme of things, 17,000 out of the budget, what there is very tiny really, so I think it's a good effort all round anyway with what we've got, so I'm quite happy with that, but I can understand the concerns. And the money's not lost, it's in general reserve, so it's not as though you've lost it in that sense, so it can be allocated again or used as a general reserve base. So I don't think there's anything too much to get too upset about really. That's my view on this. So.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Any more comments, questions? Okay, we're asked to recommend to note the contents of the report. Did I have a proposer?
Yeah.
Councillor Honeyman, a seconder. Councillor Meek, all those in favour? All in favour? Right, so anyone against? No abstentions. Okay, powers unanimously. Thank you. Right, item 5, Community Services Committee Overview, 2023 to 2024, to provide the committee with an overview of activities and achievements in the past year. Over to you, Louise.
Yeah, I think this isn't normally done. I was really keen to say to the committee, well done. We did a lot of work this year, and I just wanted to summarise how much work the committee achieved. So we looked at 40 items covering various topics across 4 meetings. We've obviously got the project log now, which has got 100 projects on it, with 43 additional projects which have been completed and removed. A whole range of work which I've highlighted here, but you can read them, so I won't go through them in detail. In terms of events and press releases, 21 press releases, 46 events, and I think we should all be really pleased with ourselves, if we were allowed to say that. And the officers wanted to say that they're looking forward to, it's hard work, we're always facing over demand for our services, but we're navigating through that and delivering the priorities.
Comments, questions, colleagues? Councillor Honeyman.
Yeah, I was contacted by residents actually last year, and then they contacted me again this year about the verges in Arundel Road, about them being cut, and looking for maps to see what it was. So I was just wondering whether now that Seaford Town Council is doing some of the verges, is whether we can actually have a map as to what the Seaford Town Council is doing and what the East Sussex County Council is doing, because the Arundel Road part is not the East Sussex County Council map, and he's very concerned that it's going to get left again. So I just wondered if we could have some sort of map, and also that was raised by members of the public about the maintenance regime that was raised on the cuts as well.
Yeah, so on verges, there is a press release that's gone out and it's on the website, and that actually links to a map which shows you all the verges that will fall under our contract. So any time you can look at that. We've also put out a notice saying when the verges are going to be cut for this season. That's within the press release, and that's also on the website. So that's 4 cuts coming up. In terms of the rest of the verges, that's a little more complicated because we know that LDC do cut some of them, or responsible in terms of ID Verdi, and also obviously East Sussex cut some as well. So we're mapping through that at the moment. ID Verdi, I've got new management, so that's also taking us time to get that information. But at the moment we can get a really good plan identifying what you're asking, which is what we're working on. We'll be the first to share it because it's causing us loads of problems as well.
I know, because he said I raised it with me last year, and then you can see the same thing's going to happen again this year. So
yeah, I think that is ID Verdicts. I think he wrote to us as well on that, and we've responded saying that we've asked them to go out and cut it.
Okay.
Anything?
Thank you, Chair. 3 points actually. First, I was really pleased to read in 5.2 that the team is preparing enthusiastically to carry on, because I know there's been quite a mountain to climb, and hopefully none of the existing councillors will shoot me for saying this, but I think the new sort of cohort, we've demanded more, and we've sort of geared up, wanted to gear up with what's going on at the council, so that's really good. A couple of small things really that I want, first of all, small thing that I wanted to pick up on 4.4, the installation of the new rubbish bins. I just wanted to say that through my district council role over in Seaford West, I've mentioned this before, we've had a trial of a rubbish bin with a wildlife flap, and it has gone pretty well through the winter. However, the first bank holiday, or second bank holiday rather, this summer, we found there was a lot of rubbish, and now that the site's getting busier, there's a lot that's just getting mounted around, and I'm going to be in touch with LDC, who will be emptying our rubbish bins, even though we'll own them, about some messaging to do with sort of educating people why the flap's there, and you know what can be recycled, what to take home, and so on. So I just wanted to put a marker down to say perhaps we might work together and sort of kill 2 birds with 1 stone, and see if we might need to do that for our bins, which are a similar design as well, to sort of avoid the problem if it might arise.
I just reply to that first. The bins, we're working closely with LDC at the moment, and we're taking our lead from them on the bin design, the flaps, and their approach. So we'll be sort of getting behind them, if you like. So if that's research moves through them, then we'll pick that up automatically.
Okay, great. That's really good to hear. And then, I'm not quite sure with Skipper Water Sports which agenda item that came under. I was trying to write things down quickly and I didn't. But with the concessions, I am quite worried. It's a new process that we've had this year. There have obviously been some issues with it and some successes. But I was a little bit worried that I think Bonningstedt was one of the ones which we didn't award. I'm just wondering if we can get a bit more information from the officer's side on why that was and how we might go forward, whether it's now in the agenda or later in the agenda.
Definitely.
It's not later in the agenda, so perhaps I can get up now. So there is no way at the moment, we have no process to award short-term lets for any of our spaces. The concessions when they went out were for a 3+2 contract, and they were based on a matrix which was scored. Kindly, the concession has mentioned their application may not have been as good as it should have been. And part of the problem for us is when you are scoring those concessions, just because you don't get enough applications, it doesn't mean you should just say, well, in this case, because we only got one application, we should award it. I think that there is something about the morality and transparency of making sure that scoring process works. In this case, it was a new process, and I think Skipper have said they've been there for a long time, and they would like to still offer the same services in the summer. We've got this May committee, we've then got a September committee which misses the summer. So I'm not sure what process we could use, whether we could, within this, and this is a little bit, I'm not experienced with this, so I might need some advice from the town clerk, whether it can be delegated to the chair to come up with a temporary approval, or whether this can't happen at all, or I don't know.
Okay, I'll answer that in a minute if we've got other councillors wishing to speak, Chair.
Right, okay, so we're going to suspend that one but come back to you.
I think
Yes.
the councillors look like they want to speak on this issue.
Okay,
So
Councillor Dubak.
I want to know why, if you found yourself in that position, why didn't you come to councillors at this meeting and say, would you like to offer the concession based on lower scoring points? Why haven't we been given that opportunity? All we've seen is comments on Facebook from people saying, where are they? We want to use them. But you've denied us that opportunity.
Are you going to answer that now?
I'm waiting to
or-
see if there's any more questions about Skipper before we
Okay.
do. We're going to do it once.
Councillor Honeyman, then Councillor Honeyman.
Well, thank you very much, Chair, again. Yeah, so it's interesting, obviously the actual concession awards stuff comes out of the other committee effectively, doesn't it? So it's not really part of this committee on one level, but on the other level it is. But in a lot of ways, I'm just intrigued to know the process. It's almost as though you want a pre-application process before you actually do the actual financial side. So you have someone who can basically at least do the first trawl, and then if there are anything desperately, the obvious things aren't missing, then you go back to them, or maybe that's outside the scope of what it's all about, because then you could argue it's a favouritism or whatever. So you've got to be careful of that. I just don't know if there's an impartial way you can do a first trawl if this particular one is sort of obviously the clerk's already there, have been already there, and there's no one else who wants to go for it. So I know as a one-off, I don't know if this particular scene can be resolved, if you know what I mean. Anyway, that's something that's going forward as well, as well as looking at what the current situation is.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
Thank you. Yes, I, as the councillor for Bishopstone Ward, so up the end where the water sports were, feel very sad that you're not returning. It was a popular concession, particularly in good weather. And it's left a gap, which we do need to consider. The question I wanted to ask particularly, and this is probably because I'm not following the text properly, there were 10 opportunities for concessions, but we're not told about what's happened to 10. We've got information here about 6. Okay, so there's 4 that we don't know about.
So,
sorry.
Yeah, so the 6 were awarded and the 4 weren't.
Okay.
Or we didn't have
So
applications.
actually, it's the way this has been written.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, apologies.
Okay.
Yeah.
So my last point is in relation to the process. It's always possible to, the process of assessing applications, it's always possible to refine and improve processes, and things change. And I'm particularly concerned to hear that in relation to the water sports concession, that the person who led that application bravely said it might have been due to my writing skills. That worries me, because I think we need to be able to, and I think that is one of the things that we are taking into consideration, trying to think how to help people with their writing skills, and I think that's in terms of applications from the general public. I think that's crucial. So I'm pleased to know that that's underway. I don't know if there's any way that this year, probably there isn't, but I vain hope that there might be a way of, given the concerns raised by the public about and by councillors as well, about the concessions, if there's any way that any of those decisions can be revisited, or do we have to wait another year?
We'll cover that in a minute, Cheryl. Just checking you've got all the questions. I'm happy to answer them.
Councillor Hanneman.
Oh, I was just going to say, we've got a full council meeting in June, so could not be an agenda item at the full council meeting in June? Because I think, like as Councillor Taylor has said, that if it's to do with people's writing and how to do things, which, you know, having looked at the forms, they're quite challenging if you haven't done that, for all of us, if you haven't done that type of thing before.
Discrimination.
So we have a full council meeting in June, could we not possibly raise it then?
Councillor Marker.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so following on from my colleague's comments, obviously disappointed about this one, sorry about it, and I can see that it's a gap. I can see that we tie ourselves up in knots on process. We've certainly tied ourselves up in knots on the processes since January on the concessions, but we've come out with some really good awards. But we also came out with quite a lot of learning from how to do it for the future. However, there's something that's kind of niggling me about this particular situation, and the niggle is that this is not a new concession that's come out of the blue and is applied. This is someone who has clearly already been supported by the public and is used well by the public. And we had other concessions that were re-awarded as continuing concessions, and I'm wondering whether there isn't a continuing concession opportunity here, because we obviously clearly have someone who, you know, no one's been writing in saying, you know, we don't want this on our beaches and we don't want this. We've got completely the opposite. So we need to listen. We don't need to be perceived to be discriminatory, but that was an issue that's only just come up today. But having said that, we do know that we have definitely been reflecting on the way that we are basically supporting inequalities and making sure that our processes are equitable. So I do hope that we can think slightly out of the box here, and listening to the public need, and perhaps, I don't know, somehow, at least coming up with a very good reason why not, if we can't go forward with this. Because I think we are a group of human beings who would like to see the best for our Seaford residents. That's why we're here, that's why my colleagues are elected to be here, so I hope we can do something just to be clear about the process at least.
I think we need to be pulling these together.
Yeah,
so
I'll keep this succinct. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah.
So, having been involved with the Community Services Committee in the new concessions award process, it was designed and very much the feeling was to try and enhance the offering for Seaford and to capture things like sustainability, which anyone who knows me knows I'm very keen on. Water sports, I'm particularly biased, having done it most of my life. I'm not going to comment on skippers specifically, because I've no doubt there's some commercially sensitive information there. But I do know that aiding and supporting our community organisations and local businesses into that process, I think we've identified as something that was lacking. But at the end of the day, and this may make me sound like a very cold, hard person, but we want best value for money for Seaford. And if we've got a concession space which we could legitimately offer, even if it may not have scored quite as highly as we would like, and that's the bit that I don't know, which would have been contained in the process that I wasn't involved in, which we can't get into tonight. But if that's the case, then it's not best value for Seaford and Seaford residents, let alone a concession who's already been there in a space that's currently not being used, because we don't get anything from it from the council, and the community doesn't. So I would say notwithstanding any commercially sensitive stuff and anything else that may go on that we're not aware of, I would be very keen to revisit, either through finance and general purposes or full council, whether we could do something for this summer, which hopefully is nearly here, although it's been very rainy today.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, Tamba.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thank you for your patience. I think it was helpful to hear all of this before we do the next bit, rather than take them all the time. So thank you, Chair, for your help with that. I think that I think the concerns that we had within the officer group are we were really disappointed ourselves, frankly, when the skipper situation happened, because we'd seen how well it had operated before this year. And we were victims of our own process, where we can't show favouritism and step outside of the process to start saying, yeah, but we like those people, so let's make sure they stay, sort of stuff. You know, as a public body, we can't be doing that. So we have to be mindful of apparent favouritism. The other thing we have to be mindful of, I'm going to make my whole point if that's okay, the other thing we have to be mindful of is what precedent we might set for the future. We can't have we wouldn't want to set a precedent where every time someone is awarded a concession, there's then a secondary process, because that will just disappear under that as a small council organisation if we do that. So we have to be really clear on, in other words, what circumstances we're giving ourselves to be able to consider this. We'd have to be really mindful of risks around favouritism and risks around precedent for the future. And as I say, future concession process, every time somebody's awarded something, they're going back to full council to have it considered again, sort of stuff, because we have to sort of follow due process. You're right about the Learning Council, Marco, and we've certainly been thinking as a group quite seriously about what processes we do around our processes to help people to succeed as much as we're able to with application processes, while also being mindful, again, we're a small organisation, so we haven't got the resources of county council to do that, for example, on the scale we might want to. And also we're trying to make our process as accessible as it can be, while still being robust enough for public money to be determined. So we're mindful of all of those factors, so we're happy to take this and seeing if there is a way for June full council to make some sort of decision. But we have to be really mindful of the risks around favouritism and precedent for the future to be able to do that.
Right. Is this about a different issue?
No, it's not. I just wanted to come back on the answers to my points.
I think I'll override that if you don't mind, because I think we need to be pulling this to an end, if you don't mind. Councillor Mark,
I was responding.
Do you mind if I just say no? I think we just need to move on. There was one thing I did wanted to add, item 4.6, is that one of the email contributors did put in some less than complimentary comments about the compost toilets. So I think we just have to add that we have had some feedback that has pointed out about some of the less advantageous things. Obviously, compostable toilets are sustainable, and we are hoping to put them in places such as Seaford where no current services exist, but they're not a universal fit with the public, I think is fair to say. Okay, I think I'm going to draw this to a close because we still have really quite a lot.
So you haven't addressed one of the residents' concerns about the verges.
Right.
About click and collect. Click and collect.
Clark, can you answer to that? Or is it,
It's me.
Did you answer that? Yeah.
Yeah, it's me. Which particular point? Because they talked about knowing a schedule of.
No, they said that community services have agreed that we would do a tender for click and collect.
Right. Okay.
Cut and
collect.
Cut and collect.
Yeah.
But this offer is for cut and drop.
Cut and drop. Yeah. So we cut and collect is more than double the price of just cutting. So we wanted to be sure that we were spending the money wisely to evidence the benefit of cut and collect. We need to do some ecological surveys and probably Christina, who's quite heavily involved in this, is going to use the right terms. But basically, we need to understand the soil quality and what happens to the soil when we drop, and what happens to the soil when we collect, so that hopefully eventually it will reduce down the amount of cuts. But before we spend the taxpayers' money and possibly increasing the precept as another link, we wanted to have all the facts. So for now, we've gone with cut and drop while we do the research to come back and then work out where we're going to do some trial areas, how many collects we will do, and how that will work.
Did you want to comment on this vote?
Yeah, just very quickly, I think what Louisa said is very accurate in the main. At that community services meeting, there was delegated authority to myself as chair of climate change and vice chair as well to work out the details. And speaking to experts and having a background in environmental monitoring myself, we're thinking of taking a bit of a longer term view. So in the short term, this year and next year, we want to do something that is not going to affect our long term cut and collect, but at the same time is going to provide better service to residents than the 2 cuts that East Sussex County Council were doing previously. So we're going with a sort of middle ground to start off with, whilst we would develop the rest of it, and then hopefully get a robust evidence long-term view where we can then assess the value for money and value for ecological benefit for the longer term for Seaford.
Does that answer the question? Yeah. Right, thank you. Right. So we are asked to note the contents of the report. I'd like to say that we have taken the concessions issue into account and we note the concerns, and we will have an internal discussion and we will be announcing, but we have noted it, so thank you, but we can't make any promises at this stage. That's okay.
So, could you just say whether we will, part of that will be taking it to full council in June?
That's what I said.
I just thought that might be part of the note. What we're approving is...
We note that it will be discussed and we will bring it to full council because there have plenty, and I think it's only fair that it's been aired and there is an explanation made. Okay. So we're recommended to note the contents of the report. Do I have a proposal, please? Councillor Meek, a seconder. Councillor Moreover, thank you. All those in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much indeed. Okay. Item 6, projects and facilities update report. Louisa.
7.
No, item 6. Sorry. Is that item 6?
Yeah.
6.
On the agenda.
6. Projects and facilities.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
So,
Project 26, isn't it?
update, okay. So, hang on, I thought we just done that. I got in the middle.
That was 5, was about activities and achievements, and now we'll talk about 6, which is progress and action, assets and services.
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to be, I think the slight confusion comes because we just talked about concessions and they're actually in this report.
They're on page 27.
We're talking about projects and facilities updates.
We can go again on 6 though, do you want? I mean, or not?
Okay,
Should we go
is
to
there anything
7?
further you want to talk about? There is the tennis concession, for example.
Or the place lane as well?
Yeah, so let's start with Place Lane.
Okay. Shall I?
Okay, if you'd like to talk through that, and then we can perhaps take any outstanding.
Yeah, so if I do a quick overview, so Place Lane toilets, which have been raised by a member of the public, and that's a sort of an option to open discussions with LDC around the way the toilets are maintained, or who owns them, or their future, their condition. There's a huge mailbag on this that I know councillors get, we get, Lewis District gets, and that's over the confusion who owns the toilets. And we also have a disparity between the approach we're taking to manage our toilet cleaning, and that's based on you as councillors telling us you want us to manage them better. So we're always going to have this difference. So this is a suggestion that we go forward as open discussions. It would end up in a formal report coming back to community services or full council. The tennis concession, this is rather sad. We did lots of work and evaluated and awarded the tender, working with the Lawn Tennis Association to advise us because we're not experts. And unfortunately, the concessionaire decided they didn't want to take the concession at the end of the conversation. So we, between now and the next time it goes out, will be working with the LTA to make lots of offers. I also approached them with a number of ideas around overmarking and using the courts as paddle board courts, because that's a very popular upcoming sport. And then we'll go again with the tennis concession for a longer period of time. This one was just a year while we were trialling it. And the reason for it being a year was we were going to have to take possibly less money than the money we currently attract by simply having members and selling the court space. But in the longer term, it should generate more use of the space and would be beneficial in terms of the health and well-being of the public. So it's a disappointing one, but it will come back to you. And there's a summary here of filming events concessions just for the quarter. I wanted you just to be aware of the amount of work that goes in just facilitating use of our assets and the sort of the revenue it brings in. This is not the summer months, it's January to May, so we do actually bring in a lot more money over the summer. Filming, which we've touched on, we've got a new filming policy. And we're meeting with Eastbourne because their filming policy is not as tight as ours, and that's causing some filming business to move to Eastbourne instead of staying with us, which is loss of income. So that's something we're working on. Obviously we've got a list of the key events, and then there's some just other updates about what's coming with the D-Day planning. And the planning for Seaford Christmas Magic, which is slightly different this year because we are working in partnership with the commercial sector. And then a little update on the concessions, which we've already done. And just to say, concessions will go again in 2025 because those that didn't get any interest will be offered out again. And we're really looking at the concessions that weren't of much interest to see why not, what is there that we could make to them more attractive to the public or those who want to take a concession, and is it the location? And so there's work going on behind the scenes on those.
Any questions, please? Councillor Meek.
Chair, I just wanted to, I presume that the complaints about the composting toilets and the state of the toilets generally, our new tender hasn't started yet, or is it just in the process of starting with the new contractor?
So the complaints about compost toilets is because there are only 4 toilets there, and we've moved into the summer season, and that's never going to be enough toilets. We knew that at the time. But the compostables, so that we have wheelchair access, we can't fit any more on there. So now that the Martello toilets will be opening, they're going to be placed in I can't say their use is going to produce, but they are going to be placed in places where there are no toilets at all. So this is toilets rather than no toilets. But on the seafront, those toilets are absolutely hammered.
But they are being cleaned 3 times a day?
They are being cleaned. We've had other problems with, unfortunately, rough sleepers sleeping in them. We've had problems with them being vandalised. So it's the usual toilet problems, which would happen to the portaloos if we had those instead. The other problem with that location, obviously, is that portaloos weren't really a goer because the Environment Agency was concerned about the weather and them being blown over. So toilets are a problem, full stop. It's like what people say. And you can put as many toilets as you like there, and they can still be of not excellent quality. But the cleaners, we have found, have been really good. We've upped the cleaner 3 times, and that's far more than they used to be cleaned. And we're hoping that with the new toilets opening, that people would be delighted with the offer.
Councillor Hyman.
Yeah, Place Lane toilets. I have to admit I was concerned that we're going to have a report coming to a future committee again, a future committee for future consideration. You know, I remember I got in as a town and district councillor again last year. One of the first things we started getting was complaints about the Place Lane toilets. And we've been round, we've even done pictures of the toilets. We've done a toilet trail looking at the state of the toilets, which was an exciting Sunday afternoon, wasn't it? Yep. In the height of the summer. And I'm concerned to see that this is coming, so the next community service is not till September again, that we've got to wait that long again before we hear any further consideration. Personally, I would have hoped this would have been priority, let's get this sorted out as quick as possible. That's the comments I just wanted to make. You know, everyone who uses them knows what a state they're in. And I would just put this like top priority, let's get these toilets sorted out, because that's really how the towns tend to be judged on things like toilets and cleanliness. That is a topic of conversation.
Yeah, just to say, I mean, I agree with you. The problem we've got is they're not our toilets.
Well.
So what I've decided to do is to approach Lewis District and say, enough already.
Right.
How many emails do you want our councillors to send to you? And how many emails do you want me to send to you saying our councillors are writing to me and the public think that they're our toilets? So let's take a longer view and look at maybe who owns the toilets, how we clean them, maybe in partnership, maybe we pay for more cleans because we clean more than they do. And that I needed to bring to this forum to say, do you want me to start having conversations with Lewis District about the longer view of these toilets? Because the way it's been going so far is clearly not working.
No, I mean, I've been in correspondence, as our councillor's been, we've been in correspondence with a cabinet member who oversees toilets.
Oh.
So, yes, we've been in correspondence with them. We've had members of the public speak to them as well about the problems they're having with the toilets, just getting through the door because the door is so heavy. It would just be nice to get this sort of, you know, as those of us who are double-hatted, you know, if anything we can do to... We know they've even been to visit the toilets as well.
Yeah. Exciting life being a town councillor.
It is.
Councillor Markle.
This is so my topic, isn't it? So I've been banging on about these toilets for 12 months. And the problem with Place Lane toilets, and we knew very early on that they were not our toilets, the problem with them is not the cleaning. The problem is they are not fit for purpose. There has been vandalism in the past, and the burn marks from the previous vandalism is on the floor. But unfortunately, because of the colour of it, one might think it might be something else. And one might think that when one opens the door. Because every time you go into the female toilets, and I can't say anything about the male toilets, but I have sent friends into the male toilets.
I send my husband in to
Yeah,
take photos.
well, so the issue being that the toilets actually, even though I have been reassured by our officers, and I accept it, I accept the fact that there is at least one clean a day, because I've been in touch with the lady from Lewis District Council. They had a note on it saying twice a day. They then told me that they'd been to see the toilets and then they'd removed the twice a day cleaning note from the front of the toilets. They are at least checked once a day. But the problem is that because the toilets were meant to be blue and they've been stained, they just look appalling. But even looking appalling isn't so bad as the smell. And there are no baby changing facilities in there that you would take a child in there for public health reasons. And the sink is in a very poor condition, and there is no bins and nowhere to dry your hands, and the whole thing is just totally ridiculous. So even though maintenance may well come over to us, my concern is it is not about the cleaning of these particular toilets, it's actually about reconstruction, but it can't be that expensive, because if you had a visitor to your house, you wouldn't allow them to go into a toilet that looks like that, because they'd never come to dinner again. So I do feel that it cannot be that expensive to change the bowls and to put a new little sink unit in and to come up with some sort of waste suggestion, which they did come up with. They said they might put a waste bin outside so they could keep an eye on it instead of inside, so that people didn't set it on fire. So I guess I want to say all that because I want people to know that we are thinking of doing something, and Louise did do well by getting in contact with and sent them so many photos. So it is happening, but my concern echoes Councillor Honeyman's, not Moon. It can't go on for another year. This is totally ridiculous. We've got hundreds of people coming to Seaford, and we can't just say it's not our toilets anymore. We've done it for 12 months, and now we're going to go around that merry-go-round for the summer again, and I just feel so embarrassed as the Mayor of Seaford that people are coming to this town and going to those toilets. Even if I have to pay a plumber myself, I just feel like I really want to see something happen. So I think if we're going to have some discussions, I feel the report should have dates on it as to when things are happening and when we can expect some change. Sorry to be passionate about it.
Thank you. Councillor Bristow.
I'm not sure I can follow that.
Oh,
I really welcome the approach that Louise is taking to explore collaborations with LDC. We know it's a mire in terms of who owns what and who thinks who owns what, and I'm one of those sad people who does know who owns what. Having been in meetings with my Lewis District Councillor role with officers and cabinet members from Lewis, and hearing about what's going on, I think there's a dimension here which Louise has touched on but we haven't really sort of brought to the fore, and that is the vandalism, the antisocial behaviour, the drug taking, the after school problems with presumably school children coming in, or certainly a time of day that's quite hot. And the other thing that I've noticed as I walk through town in the evenings quite a bit with my dog is that they're not always closed when they should be. They're quite often left open late or even sometimes overnight. So I think, you know, it's difficult working with all different agencies, but perhaps we need to come together, SDC, LDC and the community policing team, and kind of have a common approach. And we've kind of already got a bit of a focus group on it through districts. So whilst the officers will obviously, you know, work closely together, I wonder if there should be some sort of focus group looking at this so that we can try and resolve it in the shortest amount of time possible. Because yes, I do think the design plays into it, but I know that the design is a lot more complex, you know, and one day if for example Place Lane, which are LDCs, and I don't know what the long-term plans are, but if things are redeveloped, then perhaps we need to see how we get on with the Martello toilets and the single cubicles, and see if that helps removing the communal sort of space around the sinks, maybe discourages gathering, maybe that's a model in time we might want to move to. So yeah, I think working together is really good, and anything we can do to help make that happen and expedite that would be great.
Sounds very sensible. Councillor Honeyman, can this be the last comment, please?
Thank you. Yeah, I've obviously listened to Councillor Bristow, and I've got to pick up a few bits now. I think in a lot of ways, the toilets generally in Seaford should be looked at as a whole anyway, not LDCs, SDCs, and this being individual. Yeah, so there is time, and Councillor Bristow's right. You know, if you're lucky enough to go to the public house occasionally, and you come out 10, 11 o'clock, you shouldn't really see the whatever toilets open at that time of night, because people out at that time of night, if they're going to go to the loo, they're probably in a pub anyway at that stage. They use their facilities. So that's whatever, you know, you're encouraging vandalism here, so I don't even know why they're open. I don't know but it's quite regular. You could probably guarantee tonight. I bet one of them will be open tonight. So I don't know who's really in charge of that. I know historically we've had seasonal open closures as well. So winter, you'd expect everything to be shut down at like 8 o'clock, 6 o'clock in the depths of the winter. Well, why are they opening later? What's the reason why they open later? I have absolutely no idea. There's no one out. And post-COVID, there's been less people out anyway, so I just can't see why they are as late as they are.
Well, I think we'll leave it to our officers to work together.
But yeah, as long as you're aware of all those concerns I will mention, but I don't know who officially is going to lock them up. I mean, that's the key question, really.
So, very briefly, we put automatic locking on the Martello toilets, and that can be controlled by the cleaners and the concessionaires. So we actually will start to have control over them locking, whether the cleaner's there or not. In the other toilets, the cleaner does the last clean and then locks them. And the cleaner will then open them in the morning. So for Place Lane toilets, if they're doing one visit, there you can see already there's a problem. Because they can't, that one visit isn't going to open them and isn't going to lock them because they're coming either in the middle of the day or... So that's a fundamental problem which I would like to address with them. So in the short term, I've already started conversations with LDC and said, what's your best offer? And what's your offer to get us through the summer? To get us to a point where they look a bit more like ours. And loosely there has been conversation around possibly we pay for that extra clean that they don't provide. So my approach would be, subject to this committee accepting the report, would be a summer solution with a longer term which gives us the winter to work out the details. And I would like LCTC to give us some money as well, but I mean...
Well, I've got a suggestion. Can I go quickly? I've got a suggestion.
Quickly.
Both toilets are so close to each other, I can't see why can't you have a key here and one of you guys goes down and lock it in the morning? Is that impossible?
We're trying very much not to give officers more duties.
I mean, you're talking 100 yards, 100 metres if that, isn't it?
I think we need to take the details.
I let you think about it. It's not far in the scheme of things.
Okay.
I did ask about South Street, so can you not answer me now, but can you send me an email on my question?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, right. Thank you for that. I know it's very complicated, and it's not just a matter of hygiene, and it's not just a matter of money. It has to be made to work. So I appreciate it is much more complicated, and it reflects where society is as much as anything else. Okay. Right, so we are asked to note the content of the report. Do I have a proposer, please? Councillor Honeyman, seconder. Councillor Honeyman, Richard Honeyman. All those in favour? Unanimous? Yeah, okay, thank you very much. Okay, item 7, this is the project log. Just to delineate the work that's being undertaken and the vast variety of it.
Yeah.
Over to you, Liz.
So you've got the log. I'm not going to say much because the font is pretty much the same every time it comes up. It's a list of the current projects, and as I say, 43 have been removed from there that have been completed. So this is what about 50% of these current projects are active. That doesn't mean we're working on them all the time. We may be waiting for information from other authorities or for quotes to come in, but we're actually juggling them. And then we've got a whole load of others which are new or have are actually on hold. And there is a key. Oh, no, there's no key at this point. So, but we have written the details in there.
Okay. Comments, questions, Councillor Markle?
Yes, thank you. This is an amazing list of work, and I recognise that there is also those that have come off the list as well. So phenomenal amount of work this year, really. And it's an amazing list, and we liked the list when it first came to us. And in fact, if you look at it on the computer, those lovely, the last comments are colourful, purples and greens, which is very exciting. I do wonder, and it's really helpful to have committee reports as a column, and certainly for the first few you have got when they're coming to committee, and then the kind of the dates for the completion forecast. Maybe they're all the same actually, but perhaps they will get longer. I do wonder whether it would be helpful somewhere on this table to know how you prioritise what you're doing, because I think some things will jump. And just to give you a perfect example, South Street Toilet asset, project area 78. The costings and option for South Street Toilets were agreed on the 7th of December 2023, but the completion forecast isn't until 25 to 26, so it could be 3 years later. That doesn't make much sense to me in terms of the fact that we are banging on about toilets all the time. So, and then there will be other things. So I'm just wondering how we know and the public know when you feed back, which is great through community services. What areas are priorities? Because I'm guessing that this isn't the list in order of priority at the moment, so we're unable to know what the priority areas are, and that some of them at the very end might need moving up a bit.
So this list is not in priority. The way it's been filtered is to give you the community services project, the projects like to come to community services and the year date they're likely to come. In terms of the priority, I would love to say that we have a really simple system of prioritising, but it's just not that simple. At the moment, we collect all the ideas. We don't want any idea lost, so that idea is collected and put on as new, or it's assessed and maybe put on hold, depending on what our understanding is in terms of funding and budgets and timescales. Those that are active are generally at the moment ones that become operationally critical. And so we will have picked those up and said, operationally, there's so storm walls, for example, that was never on our list as a priority. It's now become active and is now a report because the storm walls we discovered weren't being placed when there was a storm. So at the moment, given the staffing levels we have, what we do is we collect all these, we assess them regularly, and then anything that comes up, like our starts come up, we pick that up immediately and run with it. And in between that, we slot in, when we have any space, other projects that we think we have capacity to do or don't require external reports or consultants' input or, I mean, for example, the toilet contracts, we're waiting to work on those, the toilet contracts out. So that will jump over everything because obviously we need to put that out. We'll give the toilets back in October. So there isn't at the moment any way of simply prioritising these projects is operationally driven.
Okay, thank you for the moment.
Yeah, thanks very much for the list. There is indeed a lot going on and I had to leaf through to find the one I was interested in. There are so many. I was just wondering if we could get a little update on number 65, which is the bus shelters, because I remember that coming to full council quite recently, and I remember bringing up with my climate change hat on whether we could input early on in the process as to the design so that perhaps they could be flexible enough to accommodate some novel ideas.
Chair, I can take that one, although
yes,
I don't know if that's Richard also wants to ask about bus shelters.
I've seen an example of one which I think it might be what we might be going for. I don't really like them, so I think I wouldn't make a decision unless you actually see the design. I think I can't remember where I saw that. I saw it somewhere. One of them
there are lots of different
town.
types, Councillor Honeyman,
So,
and there are lots of different types.
I'm not sure what it was. There is
Flexibility.
a recent East Sussex one, so a small. If it's what I think they are, they might not be suitable. So you know what I mean? I think you need to see what you're going to look at.
To answer Councillor Bristow's question, we've been liaising with East Sussex. We've explained we want to have some input about what the possible design might be, etc. And they've come back to be arranging to have an initial informal conversation with myself to help to guide what process there needs to be followed. Once that's happened, we'll come back to council about what the next steps will be.
I was just wondering, would it be possible to come to the climate change subcommittee with that? Would that be a good route?
Possibly. Once we're clear with East Sussex what the options are, then we'll be clear what the sensible process will be. I mean, I'm conscious, obviously, that although I completely take your point, that could be a good route for it, but I think to help climate change committee as well, as all councillors and officers understand, climate emergencies are cross-cutting priority for our council across all parts of our council. So any part of our council, should have climate change in its mind when it's considering things. So it doesn't necessarily have to go to climate change to have that type of consideration at the next council. But we'll see what the best route is going forward.
Councillor Taylor.
In Bishopstone, there are a number of bus shelters that are regularly vandalised. Just to make this a statement. There's a big area in Bishopstone bungalows with no bus shelters at all. I was very struck with that. There's a large number of people live up there and there are no bus shelters. There are bus stops and no shelters. How do you start, what is the process for, is there a process for generating a bus shelter? Just tell me there is one and point me to it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. Essentially, the reason why this has come through East Sussex is that my understanding is that bus shelters live with the Highways Authority, and East Sussex is the Highways Authority, so it really is, it's in East Sussex Highways will be the determiners of where bus shelters go.
Okay, so we don't have any role in that whatsoever.
The only, obviously, I think I'm very conscious of the projects on this list that we're trying to do with STC without going beyond our responsibilities into the responsibilities of LDC and the SEC. But I completely take your point. What I'll do is I'll discuss this informally with our assistant town clerk, who coordinates what's called the SLR meeting. So twice a year we meet with district and county on sort of Seaford issues. So if councillors wished us to, we could see if bus shelters might be a good conversation to have at that meeting. That might give us a starting point.
Thank you.
Councillor Mead.
Can I just comment, Chair, just also members of the public, this council has taken on an enormous amount of work, particularly through community service and particularly since our new head of assets came, and I'm very grateful to this, that we've actually got a list of the things that we're doing, because when I first joined the council there was no real list. There was all sorts of aspirations that certain full councillors said, yes, we're going to do that, and it all kind of just went into a melee of maybe, sometime, never. And Louise has just done an amazing job getting all this together, and we've achieved a huge amount in a year.
Yeah. And
I think we should be very proud of our officers who work under huge duress with the workload they have, and keeping also with an amazing budget. So I would like to say thank you very much to all the officers, because I think it's a huge amount of work that they've kept through. Thank you.
Well said. Councillor Warren.
Yeah, I agree with Councillor Mead on that. It's a vital lot of information for us. Just one thing I see what's missing, and I know Councillor Hanlon has been wondering what's happening. The rainbow bench.
Oh, the rainbow bench is not on here.
Yeah, I've noticed it's not on there. Is there any update on it, or?
It's the first question I've been asked that I actually don't know the answer to.
Sorry about
I don't know what's happened to it, and I don't know why it's not on there. So I'll take an action on that.
Thank you.
Councillor Hannigan.
Just saying the rainbow bench was put on there in COVID times. And if
NHS.
I recall, it was actually former Councillor Dunn who was the one who suggested we do the rainbow bench.
Yes, which was sent to me by
and it just keeps, well, so it's actually dropped off this list now.
Yeah.
But we're going to keep pursuing it. So thank you, Councillor Warren.
Sorry, Chair.
Is your comment about something else?
It's about something else. I wonder, Louise, there was a question to me about 2 or 3 months ago, which I did flag to you, about this money that was paid by people for a stage, an event stage by the Martello.
Yeah.
Can you tell me what's happened? Because they paid a whole lot of money, these people, in remembrance fees, and nothing's kind of happened with that. Do you know what's...
I can take that. Yeah, we're looking into that. Given the topic, that's probably going to come through F&GP.
Okay.
Because it's effectively a finance matter, it's like a finance and general purpose matter really comes through. So,
Great.
So we'll come back through F&GP about what needs to happen about this.
Thank you.
Councillor Markle.
Yes, just slightly separate, another of your lovely lists, number 12. Can you guess what it is? Well, Seaford's head signage. So very good news that you're going to be looking at the Seaford head signage. And I'm really concerned about it, and I know it will probably come up when we talk about the next item a bit. But to be fair, I was up there at the weekend when we were inundated with droves of people because it was a fantastic weekend, and lots of lovely cake and pottery at Dan's cottage at the time. And then I went along round the corner and went to the cable hut because that was opened up as well. Lots of people visiting. But there was very little signage up there about the concerns of, getting close to the cliffs, etc. So that's the first thing. And in fact, the cliff signage that says, as you walk down to the cable, don't fall off the cliff, is actually facing that way. So if you're walking this way or this way, you'd never actually notice it. And there aren't any others down there at all. People were also underneath Havenbrow. There is nothing over there about not going under there. So that's a real worry, because all the tourists that come are, a lot of them internationals, certainly they were at the weekend in their droves, and they wouldn't have understood that it was even an issue. So that did worry me. And then the only other thing that I really wanted to raise, because I was so concerned about it, and the people from the cable cuts did tell me to come and have a look, is this. So this is this. So you can either look at it like that, or you can look at it like that. And I felt that I preferred that one, obviously. And the issue is that we know we have marine debris. We can't do much about that, and I was having a brief discussion with Councillor Meek about it. It's clear this is marine debris, but unfortunately, even though it's been placed in one place, everybody else has put all their picnic stuff on top of it, and then the dog pitched up and spread it around a bit. And the cable guys who own it, this very elderly couple, said they have to spend £100 quite often to get someone to come down and remove this, because it isn't removed. Well, it isn't removed.
There's a system.
The system isn't known to them, because they're paying people to come down to move it, and the cottages are only 1 minute up there, so this is a road down to the cable, and I don't understand why we don't have something there to put the marine stuff in to be taken away, and also to have some rubbish. So I know I'm slightly totally out of turn, but it was about signage, because there's nothing to tell anybody where to put their sign, where to put their rubbish down there either. So if you're going to put signage, it would be useful to sign where to put your rubbish, and carrying it on their backs is fine, but the fact is no one brought there the bucket and the whole, all of that stuff. That's all marine stuff. But unfortunately, you know, people bring their packed lunches and then they've got another 3 miles to walk, so they unfortunately shed it. And they dump it. And they'll dump it more if they think that there's somewhere where they're meant to be dumping it, because there's stuff there already. And my argument is there's always going to be stuff there, because it's from the sea.
I went and took exactly the same photos. I loaded them onto the app, but I haven't had any recognition, I haven't had an acknowledgement.
So I just thought I'd bring it
so
up.
I'm not sure where it's gone with that, but yes, it was fairly disgusting. Yeah. Okay, Councillor Holman.
Just a short one, but back on Christmas magic, what Doris said earlier. I don't think it's new, the 24, that we've got commercial people involved, but historically we've had commercial people involved before, when we had the proper committee where the town council had a, so it's not new to 24 in that sense. It might be a few years where the town council basically took it on, but go back 10 years, it used to be a proper committee, and the town council's role was smaller than maybe it has been the last few years. So it's just I'm being pedantic, but you know what I mean, Louise. It's just a technicality, isn't it?
Sorry.
It's something that it's new, so it's never happened before.
It is a new approach to how we're running the event, and Seaford Town Council are taking more of the role of supporting the engagement side of things, which are no charge, and then the commercial offer is being done by Rotary and the shops. So it's a division which I think puts us more where we should be, which is enabling and encouraging and supporting.
Yeah, compared to 10 years ago, I can see the subtle difference there. No, there's a big difference, but you wouldn't necessarily know as a visitor when you attend anyway, but thank you.
And I think there was much more of sustainability and low cost.
Absolutely.
The cost of living crisis. So it was a very different event last year, and I think it worked.
Yeah, absolutely. So more like I've got the commercial people get behind.
Okay. Any more comments? That's quite a thorough discussion of the whole event, I think. Okay. So thank you for all that work. Even just logging what you're doing is work in itself. Okay. So we are asked note the contents of the report and the project log. Can I have a proposer, Councillor Meek, seconder, Councillor Taylor, all those in favour? Unanimous. Yep, thank you very much. Right. Okay. Now, agenda item 8. So we are asked, we're looking at updating the committee on ongoing closure of Hope Gap steps. We know they've been closed for 9 months now due to health and safety reasons, and to discuss facilitating the Town Council in the permanent future of Hope Gap steps. So,
Do you want me to take
Louise,
that? Yeah.
yes please.
I'm hearing the steps are close to residents' heart, and lots of you have spoken on the subject. This report, I think, needs to be read in 2 parts. We have a responsibility of Town Council to ensure the safety of the users of that asset, and so whilst so our health and safety officer have been down and assessed those steps and said that in their current state we don't feel that it's safe to allow the public to go down the steps. That decision was taken, and the report says this, last year over the winter, and was taken just before Walk the Chalk, when we felt there was a risk to the many legs that will be walking in that area. We didn't want to take that risk. We didn't do any repairs over the winter because the Seaford Head Nature Preserve Committee, who we take advice from, so they, on their membership is Natural England, which is the SSI managers of that head. We are custodians, is South Downs National Park, is the Wildlife Trust, and who's
National
Trust, yeah. So they're all on there on that committee, and what we wanted to do is say to them, these steps are in serious state of repair. We have an outline budget and how we might repair this, not just the steps, but also the sort of to support the cliffs around them, because the cliffs are pulling away from the steps themselves. So it's not just a case of repairing the steps, it's actually repairing the join to the cliff face. What are your thoughts? We're not experts. They came back and considered, and in March they said our thoughts are that we feel like, in terms of your need to repair them, it's going to be difficult for you to get access. It's going to be difficult for you to get permission to do what you need to do to make those steps safe. So the suggestion within this report is, one, to note the fact that for health and safety reasons they need repairing and we haven't been able to get to them to repair. But secondly, we need a complex expert, we need a complex report written by an expert, not an officer, who actually speaks to each of the agencies, including the Environment Agency, and says to them, will you give us permission to put heavy machinery, to do the necessary repairs to the steps? Will you give us permission to prop up the cliff face where it's falling down, to make sure that the access to the steps are safe? And at the moment, within that committee, the sharing of the views we're not that keen. So what we need to do at this point is note that if we're not being given permission, and at the moment we will need to apply for permission, and that could take up to 3 months just from one of the agencies, never mind all the rest, then we're holding with the health and safety approach with the suggestion that we spend the money, because it will be a consultant, to go and speak to all the agencies, given the will that these steps are kept open, and get their views on those permissions. We will not be able to do any work without permission from all those agencies.
Can I just clarify? Because the thing that was in my mind was that we shut the steps on some health and safety grounds because of the inspector.
Yeah.
Is the committee enabled to give health and safety advice to the town council?
No.
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 Because they give wildlife and environmental advice. Surely they're not in a position to give health and safety advice, which is what's quoted here.
Who's not? No, sorry.
The management committee, because what it says is that the Nature Reserve Committee is following recommendations to keep the steps closed on health and safety reasons. It's not giving it on environmental and wildlife reasons, which is what their area of expertise is. They did not tell us to close the steps.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
Can you explain that, please?
Yeah. So our health and safety officer inspected the steps and said they are unsafe. The steps going down are unsafe, the railings are rusted away, and the structure of the steps themselves, the integral structure, the concrete has failed halfway up the steps. So he said, look, this needs to be shut unless you can do the work. I took that to the Seaford Nature Reserve Committee and said, we have been told the steps need to be shut on health and safety grounds, and we would need to do significant repairs. What are your views? And that's how we've ended up with their current views, which are, well, we believe that the sensible course of action would be to leave them closed. Now, we don't have to take that advice. We have to take the health and safety advice. We do not have to take the advice of all those groups. But we have to understand, though, if we spend money and go ahead and get a report from those groups, they are entitled to refuse us to repair the steps. Let's be really clear on that. They can tell us we will not give you permission to repair the steps on the grounds of the SSSI site, on the grounds of coastal erosion, on the grounds of the nature reserve, or even accessing that ground with machinery in any shape. So this is why we've had to go this route. Sure. This is why this report takes this format.
This has taken me a very long time to get my head around it, so
Yeah, but
I can understand that other people
but Seaford Town Council
Sorry,
owns
so you're not
Postgate.
allowed to
I know
talk.
that,
Sorry.
I know, I do
Please,
understand.
it's done.
But I'm sure half this lot feel the
just as well as
same.
I do, I'm sorry.
I know, Maggie, I know,
Okay.
sorry, Chair.
But
But it's frustrating to listen to this.
please,
Yeah.
it's not fair to other people,
Okay,
okay?
thank you.
All right? Okay, but it is very complex, and we are trying to find out whether it's chicken or whether it's egg. We don't have a proposal to put to these agencies to decide whether they approve or not. It has just been a general discussion so far. Am I right in thinking that? That there is no costed survey, there is nothing hard to go on other than the health inspector's report. We don't have a health inspector's report, and we don't have the minutes of the management committee as appendices, so we don't have anything on which to work. And I would also say that there are other members of the management committee. We have 3 local councillors, including 2 from the town council who are actually here. We have the Ornithological Society, we have the Natural History Society, we have the South Downs Society. So there is a very wide-ranging set of people. Obviously, the bigger national organisations are the ones who have statutory powers and are the ones who would be involved. But I think it's important for everyone to understand that this is quite a wide-ranging selection of people. There are even Coast Guard cottage residents. So there's a very wide range of people who have been involved in this, but we don't actually have that paperwork. So we are at a bit of a disadvantage in talking about this because there is a lot that should be there in my view and isn't. And that's a comment. It's not anything else. Is Councillor Dubar?
Yeah, none of those people on that committee are qualified health and safety people. Those steps belong to Seaford. If our residents want those steps restored, then we should be restoring them. We don't need an expensive survey. We need proper contractors who are capable of repairing the steps to give us a quote. And I believe a quote was obtained at some point for £3,000. I've seen that written somewhere. Now, if it's a question of £3,000 to repair the steps, why the hell hasn't that already been done? Why are we closing steps at the detriment of our residents? Our residents want those steps open now. The signage already says it's perilous. It's up to them if they want to go down those steps. We are creating more peril because they're now going over the barrier to get onto the steps. So open the steps, get some quotes in, get the steps repaired.
Okay. Councillor Taylor.
I can understand your frustration, Councillor Dubar, but I think it's a considerably more complex situation than just repairing a set of steps, because we've got the sea, we've got the cliffs, and we've got concrete. And you can see in other parts of this coastline that is a difficult combination. We do not want to set off on a journey that's not going to be, I'd be very concerned about setting off on a journey that is going to be come to a bad end. I feel that we don't have, I think Councillor Wearmouth, as you said, we do not have, there is nowhere here a full assessment. It's not, we don't know really what we're dealing with. We do know we're dealing with a large range of interests, some of which I assume have more priority than others, so that's very complex in itself. But I would not be prepared to vote on proceeding with closing or working on the steps without understanding what are we talking about. I don't think we know what this is. And it's not going to be sorted out in 3 months. So that the other bit about a permanent future and maybe decide give it 3 months, I don't think that's probably not realistic given the complexity. I appreciate the wish to move forward with this, and we don't want it drifting on and on, but I think we do need a proper assessment, and that will cost money.
Councillor Bristol.
Thanks, Chair. So I grew up in Seaford, spent a lot of time down on the Wave Cup platform at Hope Gap. Was very inspired by the geology, the evident paleoclimatology that one can see in the rocks, the marine biology there. I also enjoyed spending a lot of time on Seaford Head with the wildlife and back in the day when I used to do a lot of running, fantastic place. That environment really inspired me to go on and study physics, natural sciences, engineering, renewables, environment, and I ended up working for several years up in Scotland, precisely in consenting of engineering projects, structures and deployments in the nearshore environment, coastal environment and intertidal zone, with environmental monitoring, stakeholder engagement, engaging with all the statutory consultees, government, local people, all the rest of it. It's slightly different up there because the legislation is very similar to down here, but the players are slightly different. And I can see quite clearly how this could be complex in the long term. So, picking up with the recommendation, I've underlined permanent future, and I think that should come out of the recommendation and subject to our discussion. Should be changed. Now I could probably speak for half an hour and I'm really endeavouring not to, but in a nutshell, I think the way we need to approach this is to look at a phased approach, so perhaps a shorter term and a longer term approach. So we've currently got, as I understand it, the steps at the base of the structure which are very eroded. We've got an issue whereby the steps coming away from the cliff. Now I'm not quite sure because we haven't had any reports whether that's a current thing, whether that's a future thing, you know, when do we need to address that? And I've just tonight learned that there's some threat to the structural integrity halfway up the structure, which I'm not sure again whether that needs doing now or later. So I'm not going to say that I've got a magic bullet here, but my first look at this would be to look at the feasibility of, is there an option that could get the steps open, regrettably maybe not this season, but next season, by, for example, overlaying a wooden structure during the summer months for part of it, subject to being able to anchor it properly at the base, if that's feasible structurally. Then we need to do the engineering, marine engineering reports. We need to look at how we might get materials there, whether that's from land or sea, the different consents that are required, of which you said that there are several, and I know from that there are. But we need, and as we are doing that early stage discussion, that's great, to look at the longer term, what we might be able to do. Do we go forward with repairing the concrete steps at all? Do we not allow access? Do we change our design, which is going to be expensive, but we might look into something like the Burning Gap steps, whereby they've got a wooden structure which they can actually bring back as the cliff recedes. May or may not be appropriate because we've got a slightly different coastal dynamics down there than they do at Burning Gap. But there are lots of different things. I'm very used to working in new industries and novel environments, and I think, you know, this is something which we really should look at closely. And you know, I don't like the term permanent future. Any structure has got an expected lifespan. Are we looking at something over the next 20, 30 years? It depends what the options will be. Is there a fix that we could do that would be safe and sensible, both in terms of environment and people, in the next 1 or 2 years? Perhaps, if we look at it slightly differently out of the box. So what I would really like to see is it the kind of task, if you like, split up like that, to have proportionate effort spent on each phase. And I must say, I joined the Seaford Head Local Nature Reserve Management Committee, and it's been great. It's been a bit of a baptism of fire, because the first walk around I had was, oh, the steps are going to be closed, and I'm thinking, oh, that ain't going to be popular. But obviously it needed to be done. But the whole structure of that, and I know we're reviewing our committee structures through the council this year, and other councillors have had some ideas about perhaps how we might have a Seaford Head committee, because also when I was working with Scottish Government, we had advisory groups and advisory committees, which is what the Nature Reserve Committee is there. And I think it's slightly confusing the terminology by calling it a committee. It's not a committee like we're sitting here now. It really is an advisory group on scientific and ecological aspects mostly, and sometimes practical, whereas, you know, obviously with this kind of thing we need proper civil engineers on the case and marine engineers. So yeah, I would favour some sort of phased approach to see if we can do something in the shorter term. If it's practical, it may not be, but it may be. And simultaneously and longer, then look at the longer term and think about what timescales we're looking over. And yeah, it's quite a big piece of work. Maybe I should start up a consultancy. Come and do it. I might, you know, on the weekend. No, but it is obviously it's you know, we have the view to the Seven Sisters here, but we have this amazing place on our doorstep, and we do need to balance it, and it's going to be ever more difficult, but hopefully we can get there.
Councillor Honeyman first.
Just following on what Councillor Bristow said, yes, so some of those aspects I understand. Obviously the water chalk last year did bring that area into the forefront of everything, even though I was reticent a little bit of the situation maybe 6 months, a year before, but I was on board with it. And even the film they produced, I think look at the wider picture down there, and I'm sure Councillor Bristow will correct me, the latest on the trying to do those sea defences underneath the actual cottages itself. Even that got passed, but then nothing's going ahead of that. Now that would be absolutely tragic if those cottages themselves, the cliffs were under that, and that could happen in the end as well. That's much more serious compared to what we're talking about, the permissions to do what those particular cottages itself, and that defence. I know it's financial partly, that's why there's that SOS group, isn't there, to do with those cottages. But even so much permission they've got, they seem to, I don't know the main person who doesn't actually want the work to be done. I don't know if it's the National Park itself, but I don't know the latest on it. But we've got to get a situation where the officers are right, you get various permissions, but then if not, someone doesn't want it, can't go ahead anyway. So whatever you do, you're stuck. And I believe that's still the case down with the main cottages. So they could go in a few years, 10 years, you get a massive storm, massive crack, and then they have to get out of their cottages, and that'd be it. That could happen, so that is I'd say that's more serious, but no, it's not panic though here. Everyone seems to assume that they're going to be up forever. I don't know if Councillor Fisher does know the latest, because she probably might.
Could you clarify your point, please?
I wouldn't be able to accept the temporary agreement with what's going on the temporary steps, but look at the wider issue down there with sea defence generally.
Yes,
I
that's
think, including the cottages. Yes. So even though it's not too far away, and it's sort of linking one level, but not another.
Can I just put a point, because I'm aware that the same point was made by a couple of members of the audience, about are the steps a public right of way? Has this been checked?
No, I've made a note on that, so we need to check on that. I mean, this report has come now.
We've closed the steps for 9 months and we don't know whether it's a public right of way.
Well, we
Is
closed
that right?
to keep the public safe.
Please, can you tell me?
Safety grounds.
I phoned them this afternoon.
Yeah.
I spoke to the senior definitive maps officer at County Council this afternoon, and They're unsure at the moment, actually, because of the way things are. So they're doing some checks, and I wouldn't like to call it one way or another, but it's a possibility that it's a right of way. But, you know, it doesn't mean that we can't necessarily close them, but we should be in liaison with them at the need.
Another agency's liaison.
Yeah, oh yeah.
So it's another piece of work that needs to be done,
Yeah,
and we cannot possibly make decisions without this full gamut of factual information,
Absolutely.
starting with the legalities, starting with the facts, starting with engineering, starting with the key statutory bodies involved, and looking at this in a more balanced way. Okay. Councillor Nick.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, I was on the Seaford Local Management Committee at the meeting we had. Just for everybody's interest, the statutory bodies were asked their opinions, and particularly the Seaford Natural History Society was concerned about access to the foreshore, but were kind of happy that they can be accessed via the Coast Guard cottages. And I think one has to realise that the overriding concern of the Town Council has been health and safety. This is a man-made structure. I remember coming here 30 years ago, and there was huge concrete bulwarks there supporting the steps. I mean, from the sides of the steps it went round. You can see where it was. There's an imprint on the ground. That was all done presumably before the South Downs National Park existed. It was done when the Natural England wasn't kind of breathing down people's necks about what you can do on certain heritage sites. So I think we have to realise we're in a very different situation from when maybe the Town Council put all that infrastructure in, when you could have taken all sorts of machinery down there without anybody, people would say, oh, it's great, they're going to put the steps in, you know. So I think it is paramount that we look to health and safety. And I have to say, Mr. Downey, I understand what you're saying here, that if you put up enough notices, you're not responsible. I would disagree with that, or I would question that, because I think as a council, if it's a man-made structure, you are responsible for it. If it's debris falling off the cliff, well, that's erosion. You know, I think we have to, you know, if someone did get hurt falling down those steps, then what would happen? Then the council would be blamed for not making sure. They'd say, well, why didn't they close them and make sure they were safe before allowing anybody down there? And I love going down there, but you can access it round the bottom of the cottages. You have to know when the tides are. You have to have, you know, people have to be made aware. There's a lady who wrote in saying, well, what you need to do is you get all sorts of foreign people up here as well. You need to put it in all sorts of languages. You're never going to cover yourself. Well, you know, you might have, you know, anybody coming in, if they can't understand the language, they could say, well, I couldn't understand the language. I didn't know it's dangerous. We can't, you know, you have to expect that people will take a certain risk. We could open up the steps and say, you go down there at your own risks. But I think you could still, in the litigious circumstances we live in, I think we could still get litigation against us by saying, ah yes, a solicitor could say, but you didn't maintain the steps and people were allowed to go down there. And I think that's why we have to be so careful as a council. So I'll leave it there, but I would like to say I think it is a very complicated problem. But I'd just like everybody to be safe, you know.
Any more comments from Councillor Duval? Is this a different issue?
Yeah. There is no evidence that any of those advisory groups have got any authority or ownership to say one thing or another, because the report excludes any of that. None of the meetings are noted, because we're not given any information, so we do need that information on what authority you're quoting these people. And Seaford Town Council doesn't employ a health and safety officer.
No.
What we have is an officer that goes round and looks at benches and sees whether they need repair. They're not qualified as health and safety officers, no more so than I am when I look at those steps and think, oh, they're a bit touchy.
Well, we have a health and safety
Yeah.
officer. He unfortunately does a lot of maintenance overseeing, which sort of blurs the edges, but he is actually...
He's not qualified health and safety
Yes, he
expert
is.
for the steps.
Oh, he's qualified to make a risk assessment on whether we, Seaford Town Council, are going to be exposed to any risk if we leave these steps open. And in terms of his view, we have health and
So
safety.
he's done a risk assessment. That's not in
Yeah.
the report either, is it? So you could have included that.
So the reason this report has been brought now, and I just address it, the reason this report has been brought now is because we said to the public, we will bring a report to the next Community Services meeting after the Seaford Head Nature Reserve Committee had met. So this is the first meeting after the Seaford Head Nature Reserve Committee have met. Their view about the steps remain the same. We were duty bound to bring a report. We do not have enough time between their meeting and the report being due to bring a report with expert comment in that time frame. The natural England, for example, require a 3-month turnaround to provide any response. So we have followed through the process and said, here is a report telling you they have not changed their mind in terms of the advisory body giving us advice. So we recommend the next steps is to go out and get the expert opinion that you're talking about you'd like.
So maybe we'll ask them for a report.
But with respect, we should have asked for it 6 months ago.
Nine months.
9 months ago. We've done very little in 9 months. That I think is somehow the distillation of the frustration. That the longer we leave the steps closed, the more likely they are to stay closed. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, really. And that means that our choice is gone, doesn't it?
Sitting on the Seaford Head Nature Reserve Committee group, when I first had the meeting, was it September last year, August? And then I understood we had an extraordinary meeting in November where we said we were going to keep them closed over the winter, whilst an options report was going to come to us in the spring, which hasn't. Now I know things have been really, really busy, but I think this is a great example of, you know, the kind of slippage that gets seasonal and then we sort of start getting delayed by years. And I think we really need to focus on our actual physical engineering options and consulting, conversations within the group, fine, but then we need to actually be formally consulting on those and sort of, because at the moment we have usually 2 meetings a year with the Seaford local nature, I always get it wrong, the group, which isn't very often. So, and I know you do talk to some of them out with that, but you know, sometimes there might actually be different people within the organisations who need to make the calls and that sort of thing. So yeah, just a plea really that I think we need to start developing proper options feasibility and then go towards scoping those options out with the stakeholders and, you know, with us as councillors equally as well, because they're not obviously the only stakeholders in that group. They are an advisory group and they all have one thing in common, which is the environmental aspects or ecological aspects, whereas we need to obviously health and safety, residents, so on and so forth. And I know from my other work that there is just such a body of evidence out there that says people being able to go out and experience these landscapes really brings them closer to nature and enables them to live in a more harmonious way with the planet as well. So going forwards, balance.
Yeah, I think Councillor Mark.
Yeah, no, with great worry, wasn't it? Yes, it's all right, Chair. I will be very brief. 3 things that are coming out of this for me. One of them is timing, and timing goes back to what you're saying, I think, Councillor Bristow, which is about seasonal issues, and I feel it goes back to the project list and the priorities. We are very, very affected. We're not like other parish town councils. We are totally affected here by seasonal priorities. That's why the toilets are a problem, that's why this is a problem. We know in September it's going to be a problem for us again in May. So when we're prioritising, we must look seasonally at the issues that are coming up, not just about who we're speaking to or what's convenient. That's the first thing. The second thing I think is clear is that there is an enormous amount of public frustration, and this is going to increase as the next 2 or 3 months will go ahead, because they are closed and people haven't been here and they won't bother to look on this website and look at this meeting. We need to put out something more than Hope Gap steps are closed for health and safety reasons. We have to have some good communication to explain what we're doing and why, and also who's involved. So if it does explain the complexity of the issue, and it's been a pleasure listening to Councillor Bristow's complex arguments about it, it's really helpful to have people with experience talking about this.
Yeah.
But we definitely need other people to know about it. Maybe we should write it, I mean, we can't talk about the media at the moment,
No.
but anyway, well, after midnight. But the issue being that you can't expect residents and others to not be frustrated, and we will keep repeating ourselves, and it will keep coming back to committees if we don't have a timeline and we don't clearly communicate what the issues are. And I think some very interesting issues for all of us shifting our perspective on this have come up today. So there's a plea there from me too, that we get that right somehow in the next week. I mean, I'm saying it's very, very soon, in the next 2 weeks.
I think there is an urgency about this.
A big urgency about it.
Did you have another point? You said 3.
No, I
So that's okay.
No,
All right, just to
that's Councillor Bristol.
Okay.
Can I propose an amendment then to the recommendation?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Right, okay.
Right, so I was going to say, to confirm that we're following recommendations, or, you see, this is the thing, following recommendations is fine, but ultimately we're the decision-making body, so we've considered recommendations, leave the Hope Gap steps closed for, see again, it's this foreseeable future. I mean, realistically, we're not going to get anything for this summer or winter, so I think we should aim to explore whether there is a shorter term solution for next summer by sometime during the off season.
Okay.
And then instruct officers to facilitate the town council considering the longer term future origins rather than permanent, because we can't go into infinity, can we? Consider the longer term future of Hope Gap steps, perhaps within a 2-year period. Something along those lines, if you think that's workable, officers.
So I would contradict that a little bit, if you don't mind. You talked about a 2-phase approach. You know, the first phase of repairing those steps at the bottom and opening them up is perfectly doable by this.
We don't know, because there's supposed to be a possible problem with the structure some part way up, and that's
who's identified that.
Sorry, Chair. I mean, I apologise if we didn't make this sufficiently clear within the report, Chair, through you. But the siting of the steps within the SSSI and the permissions needed to do any work upon the steps. And so that's why the views of some of the stakeholders is very relevant. Because we can't be certain that we'll be able to undertake pretty much any repairs to them because of their siting within the SSSI. And that's what we try to explain in the report. Sorry, we haven't made that sufficiently clear.
I just think that you've perhaps gone to that meeting and said to them, we're closing the steps, and they've gone, oh, okay. And there's not been another view presented to them. So,
with respect, Councillor, that isn't what happened.
No.
But as I say, as we try to explain as clearly as possible within the report, well, we've all reflected together on the complexity of the issues that are under discussion tonight. And it's great to have heard so many valuable views from the councillors on this matter. But essentially, because we are landowners, but where we own land that's within a national park, that's part of a SSSI, and has other restrictions upon it, we have to listen to what those restrictions are for it to be able to take any actions. We can't just proceed as landowners, we're going to do that. We can only follow the restrictions that exist around the land that we own, and the siting of these steps is a piece of land where there is a lot of sensitivities and permissions to be considered. That's just the unfortunate reality. We all wish it wasn't so, because that makes the work complex and take longer, but that's the reality of the situation that we're in.
So we do need those evidence.
Sorry,
please.
Please.
It's not in the report, is it?
Councillor
Just to
Bristow had her hand
clarify
up.
this bit, so when we're talking about timescales here and what may or may not be feasible, so we had the Walk the Chalk Festival last year, and although There was no such large engineering works as repairing steps. There were things with some bases and some stuff having to be transported over the Triple SI. What was the timescale for the lead-in for them to organise that? Was that 1 year or 2 years? It was about a year, wasn't it? So, I mean, could we expect a report back within a year, preferably less, as to what, if there is a prospect of a shorter term fix, with, you know, something that would have a lifespan of, say, 5 years, if it was an overlay of some sort, and it was just there for summer months and you took it away for the stormy period. Because if that's possible to sort of decipher that within a year, that could effectively buy us a bit of time, allow some access, be much lighter on the machinery and whatever that comes in, and then use the longer term to think about the longer term solution. So I'm just trying to sort of scope out with you what might be possible in terms of not having to wait 2 years for a paper, because I think it's down.
Can I just add one thing?
Yes, sorry, can I just ask for Councillor Markwell, and I think
Yeah,
then
so
we'll close the comments.
I've rewritten an amendment if you want
Right.
it. If you want it. Do you want me to try one?
Do you want to
Yeah,
say
very quickly.
Yes.
One of the things that is affecting the Triple SI decision making around the steps is that there is a residency of Potterbees, and Potterbees are extremely rare, and they actually are living in the cliff face around the steps. So what happens is they drill into the cliff face and make their homes, the cliff face falls away and they drill in again. Those Potterbees are the real sort of problem we have with doing anything with those steps on the edge, the joining, the access. And so it's not just it's Triple SI, it's these Potterbees that are living there, and they come and do watches and counts and all sorts. So it is quite...
It is balancing interest,
Yeah.
though, isn't it? You know, this is the trouble, and we need to show that we've had all these interests, all these factual details put down and examined in a balanced way with as many stakeholders as possible. And I think, from my point of view, this is what's missing. We need all this written down, certified by the people who are giving that advice, whether it's Sussex Wildlife Trust, whether it's the Environment Agency, whether it's structural engineers, and we need to sit down and examine this in a cold, calm, detached way on behalf of the whole community, bearing in mind we would be spending public money to get these surveys, etc. But we're also representing the residents who pay the precept.
Yeah.
So I think what we need is a balanced approach, and we need more information. Does that?
No question.
Okay, Councillor Markwell.
Okay, can I come back on the bees for a second and then I'll read out my amendment?
Please do.
I had to. I looked at Potterbees. Potterbees have been there since 1961 at least, that's when they were identified. There have been so many cliff erosions where those Potterbees are, this heat climb back. So the cliff falls out of, which is not man-made, and the Potterbees come back. So they're disturbed and they'll come back, they're bees. So even though we don't want to do anything proactively to get rid of these bees, to be fair, these bees are pretty hardy, and I think they're probably more resilient than we are. So I think the bees can go into a report, which is fine, but I really don't think we can use the bees as our excuse.
Sorry,
I might buzz off.
What about the kissing
Councillor Markwell, did you have a suggested amendment? Please, you've got me out of my misery here.
So this is a bit of a change of order of the words, because this is not helpful. In the fact that you can't just weave something in and out, so I've rewritten it. To confirm the Town Council will leave the Hope Gap steps closed for this summer season, whilst we consider both short and long-term assessments for a more sustainable solution, to expect a report from local stakeholders within the next 12 months. Just didn't like 2 years.
Right.
Did you get it?
Okay, have you got it? Sorry.
I'm not happy with
Just
that.
read it again.
Not happy with that. Not happy with that. I think you should put summer 24 for a start. And also I think you should have long, medium and long term, short, medium and long term as well, but there could be more complexity than meets the eye in all this. So trying to have definitive ideas. I can see why you want a report in the next so long.
So do we want short term
medium,
six
yeah,
months, medium term 12 months, and longer term assessment?
Well, it depends what comes out of everything. This is the issue.
Yeah, well, we need an amendment. We need to get on with our lives. We need to go home. So I think we need something to actually vote on.
Start with the structural assessment. We need the structural integrity assessment report, essentially, properly by.
You probably need to check permissions first.
It's permissions, yeah.
It's permissions all the
but
way
we
first.
need to know what needs done.
So permissions to
rectify
access the site and put people on it to do those assessments.
So the first part of that amendment.
I said to confirm the Town Council will leave the Hope Gap steps closed for this summer 2024. Yeah?
Yeah.
And then, whilst consideration is given for short, medium and long-term assessments,
right?
Because I don't think you can put what those assessments are in
No,
the paper.
Yes,
It's too complex.
Okay, that's too complex.
For a more sustainable solution, because I think we have to have a vision that eventually this is what we're doing, because we're doing this for the next 25 years.
Yeah. Okay.
And then there's a time frame that's required, I think,
Yes.
for at least the first short term. And the reason, Councillor Honeyman, I went for 12 months was because we've just been informed that it probably takes about 12 months to get the SSI feedback.
Yeah.
So I was thinking, even in short term, I'm not quite sure how much we'll get back in the short term. That's why I went for 12 months. That, in terms of this complexity, 12 months is short term, in fact.
Yeah.
But I wanted to remove the 2 years because it makes it look as though we've parked it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
So that was my...
Can we say short term is 6 months?
Yeah, you can say what you like.
A lot of information can be gathered from that.
In 6 months, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
12 months medium term, and that would be the permissions, etc., and probably a structural survey and everything else.
I don't think we can do it in 6 months.
No.
I don't.
Could you say, Louise, that you've gathered these... Because
But this is just information gathering. This isn't actually necessarily getting surveys. This is the
This is the
information
stakeholders.
gathering.
Yes, not the actual building.
Not the actual building. This could be just these are the things that are needed. I'm worried about slippage. I feel that too much time has gone already, and that if we have too much slippage into this, we're going to be thinking 2 years' time just for the short term bits. Councillor Taylor.
I don't know who you have in mind to doing the collection of the material, of the information. We do need it, but I think we need a staged approach where we're saying, at this first stage, we really don't know what we're dealing with. And until we have a full assessment and a complete picture of what we're dealing with, we can't really predict what the next 2 steps would be. We are concerned about time. We could build that into the recommendation. But in terms of, some phrase to take care of that, no question about it. But how do we, I'm perplexed as to why we think we're dealing with something here that we know we can see through to the end where it's going to go, and I don't think we can. I think we've got to have a staged approach.
But what do you think those stages should be?
Well, the first stage is bringing in
Expertise.
an consultant and looking to and asking that person to consider in the entirety the full picture as to what the pros and cons are of the various options, which would include the stakeholders.
So do you think it is reasonable to have a short-term strategy for 6 months, to have a structural survey and to amass all the information that we have already talked about, that already exists? Do we think that's possible?
I don't think that's the way to do it.
No?
I think the way to do it...
Councillor Bristow, what do you think?
Thank you, sorry
You're the
Chair.
expert.
No, I'm not really, but I do agree with Councillor Taylor. First of all, we need to identify what the problem is. We've had a general expert come in and say, I think there is a risk here. I can see upon presumably visual inspection that there are some problems. Then we need to get a specialist expert in, which will be a civil engineer or your marine naval architect, whatever, come and have a look with, not heavy machinery or anything. They don't normally use that kind of thing, unless I'm completely wrong in this circumstance. So they shouldn't have permissions to go and do that. They might need something. unless you know different.
So we need to be careful about spending taxpayers' money on all this work without understanding whether we will get permission. So we should start with,
but we
are
don't,
you likely
no.
to use permission to do any work or inspect the steps?
Because they'll just say no, because we need to come to them with a proposal of what we might need to do. We might, you might have a specialist inspect the steps and say, yeah, the bottom ones need fixing, the middle thing you can do this and the other bit you can't do. Or they might say there's no point doing the rest of it because it's going to pull away from the wall, you've got to start again. They're going to know physically what the options are, and I really think that in this kind of project is the right approach to do, because then you can put your options on the table and say, okay, if you want to remedy item A that's wrong with it, you could do this, that and the other. If you want to remedy item B and so on. Then you know what kind of engineering solutions you're going to need, therefore you know what equipment you're going to need, what crews you're going to need, all the rest of it, and therefore what permissions you're going to need for either coming at it from the land or the sea or however you're going to do it, whether you need cranes or not, or what, or whether you actually want to decommission the steps, and I bet we don't have a decommissioning plan, but there's another thing. But, you know, because we're going back to saying, Councillor Meek, that, you know, they obviously put in quite some time ago when the regulatory and legislative environments were different and so on. The agencies, they're going to have to work with that. You know, obviously legislation changes, but you've still got to work with historical stuff that's gone in. And stuff doesn't always have the best decommissioning plans and so on. So there's got to be a working together and a meeting in the middle, depending on what might be technically feasible. That's I'm not going to talk any longer. It's nearly 9:30, but that I would say is the way. So that's why I would say, as a short term, let's assess what the problem is. Let's get a specialist. We've had a generalist. Let's get a specialist. See exactly what the problems are, what the remedy options might be. Then go to the stakeholders, find out whether we're likely to get permissions, how long they take, what kind of permissions are needed, etc.
Let's find out what we need to know in order to answer the questions. So what timescale do you think your proposal would take?
How quickly you can get someone in. I mean, I would say if you could get someone by sort of 6 months-ish mark to do that first bit and then start consulting, because you can consult informally and then formally, depending on what's needed. So there might not be.
We seem to be going around in circles.
So maybe what might help is that rather than us try and intuit how long this work is going to take when we don't know, we stick with our short, medium and long term approaches, but maybe we should say reporting back to this committee at 6 months, 12
So
you automatically get stage reporting.
So it doesn't go.
So 6 months time you have a 6 month time report, and we'll see how long it took. We'll see whether that means we're not tying it. It doesn't matter. It takes 5 or 7 months. You'll still have so do that.
Because it might be they might come back and say, oh, there is no short term fix,
exactly.
and you're only looking at long term. Or they might come back and say you do have some options.
And it ties in with the maintenance log that we need to keep active. And we need to move it on. So, can I have someone who feels brave enough to pull this together in an amendment that we can make?
George, I think George has got it.
Yes. Okay. Can you?
I've taken Councillor Mark Wells' amendment and added in parts of what has been discussed. So the amendment would be to confirm the Town Council will leave Hope Gap steps closed for the summer 2024 season, whilst we gather information ahead of considering a short, medium and long-term assessment for a more sustainable solution. The short-term stage to be to commission an expert to identify what the issues are and what solutions are available, for presenting to the other stakeholders to ascertain permission likelihood and timeframes, reporting back to this committee at 6, 9 and 12 months.
So that would take us to the November, December community services. So that would fit, wouldn't it?
And then next year.
Right. Okay. Can I have someone? Well done. That's miraculous. Thank you. I'm very aware of the time.
Propose.
You'll have to propose that.
Second.
Councillor Bristow, seconder. All in favour? Hooray.
That's unanimous, Chair. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for your contribution. It's much appreciated. And the 9, is that right? Okay. To seek approval from the committee for a grant in kind to Seaford Pride, should they acquire charity status ahead of the 2024 event.
So in kind is where we don't actually give them any money. We use our assets and offer those assets to them for free. So it's a really good way of supporting organisations without actually spending any money. There is obviously the knock-on effect that we're not attracting income on those assets at that time, but if we take the point that we are about enabling, engaging and working with the community, then this is a really good way of working with community groups. Now, Seahaven Pride come every year. They're LGBTQT communities, and they offer a sort of an engagement much like Pride in Brighton. They have approached us to say that they want to work with us, and what can we do to help support them in that working. So we have suggested that we bring to you as councillors that offer of whether you want to engage and support, or whether you don't want to be linked with this event. And if you do, we're suggesting there is an in-kind offer of, it's about £1,700, and that's by giving a lot of our assets for free, and in terms of parking spaces and the space they have the event, some of the signage, it's all listed in 2.3. If you don't want to approve, then you could offer the reduced booking fee, subject to them becoming a charity. And we're working a lot with organisations at the moment saying that it's very clear to get our not-for-profit rate, you do need to have charitable status. You can't be a commercial organisation. So that they are applying at the moment for charitable status.
Councillor Honeyman first, and then Councillor Markle.
Yeah, I've attended this event for the past 2 years, and it is a really, really good event. There's lots of families there. It's a really, really good feel-good factor.
Yeah.
I know there was the odd occasion 2 years ago, but that was because people were a bit drunk and being a bit silly. But it has a really good atmosphere, and there's so many activities. There's family, and it's really good for Seaford.
Yeah.
For what goes on there, so I really fully support this. I remember speaking to the organiser last year, and you know the passion that goes into organising this event and trying to get the different acts there. So I fully support this proposal.
Thank you. Councillor Markle.
Well done. So I was also at the Pride last year, and I thought it was fantastic. I thought the amount of people that came in, I thought it was a very intergenerational event. What bowled me over was how much preparation and time had been put in. And I also felt quite sad because we did actually have some quite negative comments last year from them, because there had been a lot of confusion about application forms and heaven knows what, and support. And so I think in a way, us making this offer is a very, very good idea. We want people like these people who are prepared to put in so much effort to come to Seaford and bring in visitors. We need this. We have the assets to do it, and I think we really need to encourage it. And it won't be, if it's not then next year, it might be someone else. But you know, this is what the summer is made of for Seaford, and this is what brings people in from the surrounding towns as well. So I really, really hope we do support this. I think they're a very good group.
Thank you. Councillor Bristol.
Thank you, Chair. Forgive me because I'm getting a bit worse for wear just now, but my understanding, so we would give them a grant in kind should they acquire charity status, and then it's speaking about giving them reduced charity fees if they get charity status. So if they get charity status, would they get reduced fees and the grant in kind?
So
or not?
Sorry. So in there it says no. I know it's confusing. Basically, we're saying if you want to give them a grant in kind, given that they're going for charity status, you're giving them to the value of £1,700. Should you decide no, we don't want to do that, then the other option is if they get charitable status, they will get the space that they rent at the charitable not-for-profit rate.
Okay.
They are not at the moment a charity.
Yeah. So thank you. So the second part of my thing is I understand it's a great event, and apart from raising awareness of the LGBTQ plus community and from Seaford and other towns, Seahaven. It really does bring a lot of people in, and it seems to be fantastic sort of across the community. Putting my sort of cold heart on, if you like, it happens every year, and it says in 2.6 we've got a precedent of waiving certain event fees where it's been deemed appropriate, and examples of the 2022 Skip Beacon show and the Walk Chalk. As far as I understand, they were one-offs, whereas if this is happening every year, is it going to set a kind of recurring precedent? And whilst I completely get the desire to support, and I think we should be supporting, I'm kind of trying to think of what is the best way to do that if this is a recurring event, both in terms of the council's resources and finances, and also just being fair to any other events that might happen every year. You know, you might argue that Motorfest is also really good and draws in a great crowd. Do we do the same for them? So I'm just kind of trying to level that in my head, so if there's anything you could tell me about that, that would be great.
So, yeah, so it's a really valid point you're raising, and this is why this is about in-kind grants. We've brought it here. It is something we can't as officers do. So if they become a charity, then they get the not-for-profit rate, which is something we can do and is part of the framework. Going forward, I think we do need to think about where we partner with events and how we want to partner and what that actually means and what is the relationship to go, you know, long term with that partnership. So you're absolutely right, this is an every year thing. Does it mean if they need us to give them in kind it's not sustainable? Does it mean that every year they're going to be asking for more? We don't know these things. I know this instant they have approached us and said, would you consider doing more than you did last year? And we have brought that option to you.
Another thing that crossed my mind just very quickly is it's called Seahaven Pride, and you know, Seahaven's obviously here, Newhaven and Peacehaven as well. I wonder if we were to say yes, we'll give them in-kind help or something, but say, okay, we're only going to do this sort of a max of 1 in 2 years or 1 in 3 years, and maybe there are pluses to them holding it in Seaford every year, of course, and then maybe they might like to host it in some of the other Seahaven towns as well. I don't know what their plans are, so I don't know whether you've got any inkling on that.
They go to other towns every year.
Do they?
Anyway. Yeah.
I'm getting aware of the time. Councillor Warren.
Yeah, when Seahaven Pride first came to Seaford, I think they were turned down in Peacehaven, and that's why they came to Seaford. We're a bigger venue. I was going to ask similar questions to Councillor Bristow. Is this just for 1 year? I'm just thinking of other charities, or can we treat them like the Seaford Bonfire Society, where you know, we work with them with Martello Fields, and you know, they make sure that I mean, once they come with charity, I mean, they could come through the grant system. It's those sort of options, but I'm supporting, you know, this because it is such a big event for the town. But I'm just thinking of the other charities, how it puts them. They pay for the fields to use. Yeah.
Councillor Taylor.
So if I understand you correctly, we don't know yet if they're going to get charitable status. They don't know, and I don't know how long that's going. We don't know how long that's going to take.
6 months.
So could we? Okay. So this probably is the last year that we won't know, and we might make another different decision next year based on what happens with the status, and that gives us an opportunity to think somewhat differently about it next year. That's what we want to do.
Councillor Markwell.
Just to say, they got a grant from Newhaven last year, Town Council. They applied to all the Town Councils for grants. They got a very nice one from Newhaven. They were able to use that, but they were a bit disappointed because they didn't get one from us. So I mean, again, you know, they're not just applying to us for money. They can because they're Seahaven, they can apply to the other towns as well. So I think I agree with everything that's been said. I really would like them to be supported, but this is a journey for them. Once they've got charitable status, they're equal to other charities in the town who can apply for grants like others. I don't think we should set a precedent to say that it's going to be them every year. That's the precedent. I don't think we should do that. But I do think we should think about if this is something we can do to help continue other charitable work during other years, then that's a good thing that we can do. It's something that we can offer. But maybe it goes to another committee.
Did anyone else have any more contributions?
Yeah, I mean, it's only 3 months away, so they should really know by now, more or less, if they're really trying to be part of the organisation. You know, if they are going to be charity status, what's holding them back? Do they not apply as soon as the other one finished last September, so to speak? Was that out of control? We didn't know, of course, did we? And that's the. I know that's Captain Michael said there was a lot of money from other parts of the longer coast there to the Brighton border there. Yeah, there's various schools were involved and everything. I'm happy I'm happy on this occasion, but I think you are right about looking at the wider picture after this particular year, though, because as you say, what's a charity, what's commercial, and that's something that can be a fine line, can't it, really?
Are they not for profit? Sorry.
I was just going to say that we agreed to this for this year, but it comes back to this committee after they've received their charitable status.
Yes, I think that's important. I mean, that should be covered in the recommendation, the way it's worded. It is only for the 2024, so I think we've got that covered. Okay, so we're asked to consider the request for grants in kind for Seahaven Pride should they acquire charity status ahead of the 2024 event, and I think it's the fact that it's got the date in it. And to confirm the Town Council's support for the event and for an official statement of this being released. So I think I'll take the two together. Can I have a proposal, please? Councillor Hyman and a seconder, Councillor Warren. Thank you. All in favour? Again, unanimous, I think. Thank you. Now, okay, I think in view of the fact we have 3 agenda items left, it is 20 to 10 and our contributor has been waiting very patiently. Can I suggest that we suspend standing orders so that we can go over 10 o'clock?
We do best pass the motion to go past it. We just have to pass the motion to go past 10 o'clock.
Right.
We don't suspend standing orders altogether.
Okay, right. Can I have a proposer to extend and a seconder? So Councillor Bristow and Councillor Warren, thank you very much. So we can have an uninterrupted debate without too much time. But obviously we are aware of the time.
Sorry, Chair, we just need to pass that as well.
Okay, can we have a vote? Sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you.
Unanimous again. Thank you very much. Right, okay. So this is the proposal for a plastic-free memorial bench on the seafront in memory of Claire Somers, who is sadly passed away in 2022, and this is a memorial to the extraordinary environmental work and awareness that she did before she died. Okay.
Shall I do a quick?
Yes,
so there's a full report that has been produced by Plastic Free Seaford, which sits behind this. The summary or the key points are the asset would go on to our insurance details, but we wouldn't be maintaining it for 20 years. So there is, but it's been budgeted by the proposer to maintain the bench for that time, so it's no cost to us at all. The installation of the bench, we can take it in the 3 stages, but the installation of the bench is on the seafront. It is metal, so it's completely different from the other benches we have, and it also talks about so we've covered the installation, and then it's about the design. So it's a slightly unusual design, which is worth having a look at in the report. And the design is on page 52. No, that's the notice.
50.
50 is the design.
Okay. Comments? questions? Councillor Meek.
I'd just like to say I fully support this, and I'd just like to commend Fran Chilton. She's just been fantastic driving this initiative forward herself, as well as driving the whole plastic-free initiative in the wake of Claire's amazing leadership and instigation. I think I would support it on every aspect. I think that obviously the site has to be determined, and that will be done presumably in conjunction with Fran and Claire's husband, and will be agreed upon by officers and maybe councillors, I don't know. But we have to find a suitable place for it. But I think it's great. It's going to be long lasting. I think we've got a good designer and a craftsman making it. It's obviously going to be weatherproof. It's got oak slats, I believe, and the rest is stainless steel. So I would hugely support it. I think it is very suitable as a design, and I think it's great that it's so different from all the other benches. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Warren.
I totally second that. I think, yes, it is a lovely memorial to Claire. And I think the design is iconic, and I think it will look terrific on the seafront, so I fully support it.
Councillor Honeyman.
I was going to just echo the same, that I think it's a really nice design, and I think because it's been looked at quite thoughtfully as to what the right materials are to actually use, because it's being a coastal area. So yes, I was thinking,
Councillor Stowe and then Councillor Beaver.
I've got a different take on this. I completely recognise the amazing work that Fran's put in, that Claire put in, and that everything's happened, and then of course the tragic loss of Claire as well, and all the great things in Seaford that started. So what I'm about to say, I don't want to reflect on any of that at all. I think there are two strands to what I'm thinking. The first one is that we've got a memorial policy, and the reason why we've got a memorial policy is because if we didn't, we could get all sorts of different things coming and different requests coming to Seaford, and things would not be sort of in keeping with what we've got, or appropriate. I don't actually like the word in keeping, I would say appropriate. And the reason why I'm saying appropriate is because a lot of the benches that we've gone for recently are recycled plastic, which is great. This is obviously marine grade metal, which is fine. But for me, I don't think this is ambitious enough. And having had quite a few discussions with Fran before about where this could go, what it could be, so on and so forth, at the moment it's described as a bench. It's a really inspiring design. We have got a marine debris problem in and around Seaford, in the beaches, in the town, in the beaches that are either side of the town, like Tide Mills and Hope Gap and so on. We're also very much plastic free, and we want to be collecting plastic and recycling it where possible. Now, we did apply for one of the Green Seas bins, which I understand isn't going ahead due to cited lack of footfall. And in doing that, we had an agreement or an offer from Lewes District Council to actually empty that, which would have been a receptacle for plastic recycling. It would have had a function. And this is what I'm getting to with this. I am not comfortable with it coming forward as a bench. I think, because, then we could have 200 different types of benches, and they could all have fantastic reasons and commemorate fantastic people in our town. But I think this ought to look higher. We've now got a climate emergency policy, which we've just passed in the town, and I would really like to see this be worked up to have a function. Could be something like receiving plastic, could be receiving hard plastic, marine debris, which East Sussex can get rid of. It could be PET bottles, which LDC can take, so that it's actually got a function, and therefore it could also be considered slightly separate to just merely being a memorial bench. And it could really bring continuing benefit. And if you were to look at that through the lens of carbon accounting and life cycle assessment and you know, all that, it could actually become in itself carbon neutral and help to actually keep on improving, not just by education but by practical function, the environment as we go forward. So I think for me it's fantastic, but I would like to see it drafted up a little bit more and for it to actually fulfil that function and bring a real benefit, tangible benefit to Seaford in that way as well.
Councillor Honeyman and then Councillor Markle. Sorry, I do apologise, sorry.
Okay,
Councillor Dubar after Councillor.
In a lot of ways, I can see what Councillor Bristow's sort of trying to say. And when I visited Southsea last year, actually prior to the park, and Olivia was with me as well, there is a collector bottle similar to what we had at Walton Chalk, one of those big bottles where you could basically fill things up. That was at the back of around the back of the pyramids at Southsea there, you know, where that particular part. And that is a sort of a what you're describing, you know, you can imagine it was full of collections, you may collect rubbish in it and recyclables and all the rest of it. It's like to see where you're thinking of something a bit more in keeping with what Claire was all about, as opposed to just a seat.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can see why you put a bit of reticent place to. I'm not sure how well that would go on the beach, on the seafront at the moment anyway, that particular design. I quite like the design, but it's got to be in the right place, if you see what I mean. You see what I mean? It's a bit like the one outside the library, good design, again, but is it the... Anyway, you see where I'm coming from, so maybe, I like the principle of what we're going ahead with, but I'm not sure if that's the actual one, should be that one, anyway, so...
Okay, thank you. Councillor Dubar.
Stand up so that I'm talking to you. So, Plastic Free Seaford was started and picked up by Claire, and she's done an absolutely amazing job in picking up the mantle from other residents that started it and other residents that continue to do it. But I can't really say it any more eloquently than Councillor Bristow has said. We do have a memorial bench policy, not to have any more benches, and something that would be long lasting and more of a memorial to Claire would be plastic collection receptacle with her story and what it's about, and I think it would resonate more with residents. Thank you.
Councillor Honeyman.
I think Councillor Markwell was first.
It was indeed.
Sorry.
You're not looking at me tonight, Chair. I don't know why. Anyway, so echo everybody's feelings. I didn't know Claire personally. I've known her work. I'm hoping to still promote Plastic Free Seaford and everything that we're doing this year. I have a problem with process, because everybody knows I have a problem with process, so this is not personal to Claire or anybody else. We have a memorial policy which we kind of stopped for whatever reason it was. I think officers will have to remind me. My concern is that I've had other asks about memorial stuff and lovely ideas and amazing people, and so I'm kind of taking a tangent on this. So this is nothing to, this subject has brought this up into my mind, but whatever we agree tonight with this idea, and it's however brilliant and wonderful and endearing it is, we then give ourselves a precedent problem for what we're going to do in the future about our memorial policy. So in some respects, Councillor Bristow's idea, echoed by Councillor Dubar, on it being a memorial but not quite like a memorial because it's actually a living thing that if you ask Claire maybe what she would like, that maybe she may have said a bench, but maybe she would have said something that reminds everybody about what her commitment is to this. It wouldn't then be classed as it gets you out of the problem of being classed as a memorial itself, even though it's an epitaph and it's wonderful. But also, it feels like maybe we need somewhere in Seaford where we can also acknowledge Claire in that way as a memorial. So you can have two things, but that we recognise other people as well. So when people are coming forward and asking us, and I'm not sure what that looks like, I haven't given it much thought at all, others might have other ideas, but it feels like we are continuously going to have, we have wonderful people in Seaford, and they are going to be doing great things, hopefully, in the future. So what else could we do? And maybe this comes to a different meeting, because you might not have time to discuss it now. But I do think it raises that issue, and I just wanted to park that a bit for us, because
officers have a reply to that.
So on the reason why the bench has come forward now and the memorial policy is on pause is because this project started before the memorial policy was on pause. So it was actually discussed, and the work and the project and everything else. So it's been allowed to come forward because it sort of overrides the policy. In terms of it being a bench or it being a useful something, then that's the discussion. There's a motion on here where you can actually accept the idea but return the design if that's what you want to do. So that is an option on the moment.
Councillor Taylor.
I have a slightly different take on this. I feel, and I didn't know Claire, I do know someone who was close to Claire. I'm concerned that this is a memorial that's come, this proposal, I guess, has come from the family, and here we are trying to change it. I don't know if that to me just is a bit uncomfortable. If I was in Claire's family, I think would need to be a conversation with the family. I'm broadly calling them family and friends. It becomes something else, which is equally valid, and it's something we could do anyway because we might want to celebrate this person. I don't know that, but I'm concerned about making this move without further consultation, and maybe this is not a place to talk about it.
Sorry, I was actually going to say, because I was off to say, but there we go.
Sorry, did I take your...
Don't worry. My concern was as well that this has been put forward by the family. So this is obviously what the family were wanting, were proposing. So I would feel completely uncomfortable to go anywhere, yes, no, or anything without going back to the family and for Fran to go through this. I don't think, because obviously it's memorial, we've got a memorial policy that's been postponed, but if you said this was done before the memorial thing, then this needs to go back to the family before we make our decisions on anyone else's legacy memorial. That's my feeling at the moment. I'm feeling uncomfortable when this has been put forward by them.
Okay. Councillor Mead, did you have
Yes, please,
a
please.
and then Councillor Christian?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. This has been, crowdfunding. I mean, this has been people have donated towards a bench for Claire. The bench has been designed. We're right down the road with this, and as has been pointed out in the report, it's 2 years since Claire died. We need to get this bench there, otherwise people are going to forget. And why don't we do? I think the Climate Change Committee ought to instigate a receptacle for plastics in addition to the bench that has already been funded and is totally funded, totally ready to go, totally designed. Got the guy who's going to make it. The whole. Sorry.
I'll write some grant applications for that.
Yes, I mean this is through grant applications and all sorts of things. So I mean the work has gone in. I think particularly this is a huge report as well. So much work has gone into this. I think it'd be a shame, and I think we ought to supply a receptacle for plastic or whatever we want to do in addition to this bench to honour Claire from our point of view as a town council, not as the friends and family who've already raised the money for it. That would be my suggestion.
So it raises interesting suggestions of other ways we honour residents of Seaford that perhaps we're not doing at the moment, which are just benches with inscriptions on. We maybe need to think about other ways of doing this.
Put a clarification. So on the website we have a memorials and donations policy from 2018. Does that not apply to this?
Yeah, it should.
Because although you said there's one which is kind of on pause to be reviewed, we still have one.
The policy, sorry Chair. No.
It's not clear
I think being fair to everybody is really important.
Because, yes, we need, it's and I do feel slightly uncomfortable discussing this in a public forum, given that it's obviously quite emotive to family who've tragically lost somebody. But in our jobs as councillors, in our roles as councillors, we've got to ensure that proper scrutiny is done and we're following the proper policies.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm trying to ask.
Okay.
Yes, if you could just answer that process question.
Is that the memorial, the policy you refer to relates to basically objects that are then owned and owned by and the responsibility of the town council. This is not an example of that.
Why?
Because we're not going to be owners of it, and we're not going to be the maintainers of it.
So what happens to the land it's on? We come back to this third party problem that we have at the Crouch and the Salts, where we're allowing a third party to install something with no tenure over the land.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is a real problem that we've discussed in so many spheres already, and we don't have an answer to, and it's really unclear. Because otherwise we're basically saying, and I feel uncomfortable saying this, Fran, do excuse me, but this is a technical point here. Otherwise we're basically saying anyone can go and install something if we think it's a good idea. They don't have to pay us lease money, they don't have to make sure there's third party insurance, all these things that we currently have. And yeah, we've talked about this lots, haven't we? And it's unresolved. So how is this then different? So, you know, to me, it'd be better if it did come under either memorial policy or we give it a function and then it can go ahead. Because at the moment... I'm conscious of time, Chair, so I don't really want to get into that now, if that's okay. Well, it's a valid point, we need to get into it.
That I think what I mean is, with respect, is that we are really careful as officers to bring anything to do with land owning by the town council to councillors to determine. Councillors are then free to determine what they wish to do. So we have historic examples of previous councils deciding to give permission for assets to go onto our land, and so then we have to live with those decisions.
We've seen the problems,
but
which are ongoing.
But we take them on. Yeah, but take them on this particular. So what's happened here again is we've approached our group who've asked our permission to place their asset on our land to enable this memorial to take place, and what the report is saying is basically for councils to determine that they're satisfied, that's reasonable in this case, so that some matters can proceed.
Okay. Okay. Councillor Hyman and then Councillor Duval.
Well, yeah, as you say,
Councillor Mark and then I'm going to wrap
I mean, it might be ready to go, but we haven't got a spot for it yet, so it's not ready to go, is it? Even if it was designed, even if it was ready to be placed tomorrow, that's not ready to go in my eyes, so that's something that you can think about. Like the bench at the library was paid for by someone else that we've taken on and maintain it ourselves, so that was another, that's a complication in itself. When the shoal was built in the 3 phases, that was meant to take part of memorial bench. That was one reason why that was allowed as part of the SCP was because of the Halton doing memorial benches anyway. So that, as far as I know, that was the case. It was in 3 phases, wasn't it, what I remember, in 2015, 16 or whatever it was around that time. But you know, I think this, I like the idea of everything, but I think you may be making, it's you know, maybe someone else important. I don't mean like that clear, you know what I mean? Someone prominent in Seaford who might want another bench later on, a few years down the line, someone else passes. Unfortunately, they want a big bench.
We've already had people asking for trees, but we've got no.
I know. So it's a tricky one. I mean, I've got an idea where it could go. Something like the Sunken Garden, for example, on the SCP land. Well, that's just my idea. You'd have to go to Keith Blackburn for that, because that will make that end the land. It will give it a bit of distinction having it there. That's just an idea. But you said, I mean, there's lots of things don't quite be thought about yet. And it's the principle I think we all agree with, but it's just the actual next stage is the hard one.
But I think the idea that there could be other locations near the seafront.
The Sunken Garden was an idea.
Okay, Councillor Duval and then Councillor.
There's an awful lot of work gone into this, a lot of people involved, all designs and everything done, and an expectation. And why are we only being presented with this now? Why did this come to us when the family first approached you and said, can we have a bench? You know, then the principle of it could have been discussed before they went to all this.
It did, and it
trouble.
was.
Oh, it was. So it's been to a committee before?
It has
It
been.
was 2022.
Yeah, it did, yeah.
So it's been approved by the
Yeah.
council previously? Okay, well, it doesn't say that in the
Well,
report, does
that
it?
would be helpful then to note really, because
Yeah.
I think that is an important part of the journey really, isn't it?
Yeah.
That hasn't been made obvious from these agenda items. I'm losing the plot here. Councillor Margaret.
My question has been answered.
Okay.
Can I propose?
I think this is going to be the last.
Go for it.
Could I propose?
Yeah.
I would like to propose.
Right. Shall we go through this one at a time?
Fingers
Yeah.
and seconds together, so.
Are we happy to take them all together?
Well, no, I'm not happy with
Right,
that.
okay.
Number
I
one.
think we take them one at a time, and we get a proposal and a seconder for each one, if that's okay. So first is to approve the installation of the memorial bench on Seaford Promenade. I have a proposer and a seconder. So Councillor Meek and Councillor Warwick, sorry about the passes on. All in favour?
1, 2, 4.
Those against?
1, 2, 4. I'm jury.
And abstain.
Again, you didn't answer my question anyway. So I said point of order.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I said it wasn't ready to go on a spot in Seaford Promenade.
Sorry, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry, I didn't
No.
hear you as councillor.
You didn't say where it was going to go on the promenade, so how can you say it's going to go on Seaford Promenade when you don't even know where it's going to go?
Because it says location is open to discussion.
So I think that's totally inappropriate. I think you may want to say possibly nearer the seafront as opposed to just, it might not be the seafront in the end, you see what I mean? You may have to think of a wider, it could be in the environs of the seafront, you see what I mean? It might not be appropriate on the seafront.
So we need a definition of promenade, don't we?
Absolutely. It's true, I'm not trying to be funny, but
Pardon?
Richard's suggestion of it going into that new garden that's going to be coming
Well,
on board is probably a good
it's not new
idea.
garden, it's not new garden, it's established by good beach garden, that's just an idea.
Yeah, because that's already got
It's already got
cogs.
benches in there.
It's got
On
cogs.
the seafront or the environment?
Seafront.
Yeah, I'll be happy with that.
On the seafront or in the environment?
Environs,
Environment.
I think that's very vague.
and I'm more happier with it.
You didn't vote.
That's an amendment then.
I felt I needed to abstain because
Oh, you
I
abstained.
thought
Hang on, you're
important to abstain.
Point of order, you're a hung jury, you get the
Yeah,
deciding
exactly.
vote.
You can't abstain.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to vote against it unless we change the definition of promenade. I think seafront.
Yeah.
I would feel happy with seafront because I think that gives a wider choice. Promenade is very much, to me, one
Don't think you can do that.
facing the
I
seafront.
don't
So
think that
can I
works.
You can't do that.
Can we propose a change of the wording?
No.
That's an amendment though.
That would have to be
I
an
don't
amendment.
think that would actually work in practice, and I think, I don't know, if we're taking why we're against, I think it's more that we would like to see something, but it's more to do with the policy and process
Yeah, it's more
of the
that, really.
council, rather than the exact location.
Yeah, well, although it doesn't help like the
So,
location at this
That's
stage.
kind of why I think we've been saying, think about what you want it to do, and come back
Yeah.
with something that's got a function, which could go forward.
I mean, can I quickly come back to
So that's a different reason, isn't it? So.
Can I quickly come back? Does it have to be that design, or is that open to?
They should just vote.
I mean, we're undecided on one.
So we seem to be undecided whether we want to amend motion one or vote against it, and I'm not quite clear, Councillor, on what you're trying to propose.
I mean, personally, I don't think that the report's ready. That's my own view. It's almost ready for certain things, but I don't think it's quite ready overall.
So we voted 5 against and 4 for.
That's why you have 3 as well as 1, isn't it?
Well, we've already voted now, so
Yeah, we've already voted for
the
it.
vote stands, it's 5 against.
But you
No,
said you were
I
in favour.
abstained.
The chair said she would vote for it if it was
I
not
abstained
But you can't do that
because I
because
wanted
you
an amendment. I'm not happy with the wording of that, but I would be happy with another.
But it's too late, isn't it? You've already voted.
And we've already voted.
Yeah.
Technically, we've got a balanced vote, so you do need to make your casting vote. If you then want to make an amendment, kind of a new proposal, we could do that, but we do need to finalise that first.
I will vote against it because it says promenade.
Votes against them.
Sorry.
Right, so not
So
going
now,
well.
now the floor's open to if anyone wants to propose a new
Right.
amendment.
Can we have a proposer for an amendment to the wording of Seaford Promenade? Councillor Meek, what would you like to change it
To approve
to?
the installation of the memorial bench on Seaford seafront.
Where's the seafront?
Yeah, where's the seafront?
It's probably not
Where's the
where
definition of seafront?
Where's the seafront?
That is,
If you put it on the shingle, you'd have to
That
get the
go
environmental
Within
agencies
view,
permission.
within view of Seaford and the beach?
it has to be town council land, and
Town council land.
which is the beach garden could include that, couldn't it?
No,
Would it not
because that's
say
the
the
EA.
environment of the seafront?
And it'd have to
On the
be
seafront
movable.
or the environment? I mean,
Can
and
they
that
park
then
on that
allows
to the
for
next
something like
meeting?
that garden you're talking about, or
Can I-
something equivalent.
Can I maybe make
Sorry.
a suggestion? It may not be what the
Please.
committee wants to do, but whether you seek to delegate power to finalise the exact location of this bench, because obviously, I mean, I think, you know, you're clearly not in a position to identify a location yourself, so even amending it to Seaford Seafront or within the view of Seaford, it still doesn't help with the location and making the decision going
Make a
forwards.
delegation to them.
So, in a location which is to be mutually agreed by who?
No, you can't, no.
By-
Delegate. Sorry.
Can I
You-
propose that
point of order,
this
you'll be
comes back to the
discussing
next meeting with the necessary workings up? Because I think we'd like to see something go forward, but it's just not ready.
So how do we?
So you can leave it there because you voted against the installation.
Yeah.
It
You
can be
come back.
noted that this is going to be brought back to the next meeting.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I think I would maybe just make a suggestion that it might be worth us just clarifying kind of bullet point, what do we want to see improved for when it comes back, just so we don't
Yes.
find ourselves in the same position again.
Yeah, and
Good point.
because we don't want to distress the family and Fran anymore, but I think we need to get this right so we feel that it's right for the residents of Seaford as well as the family and obviously the people who raise the money. So what do we want to clarify? The location, the purpose?
The what policies it's coming under?
Yeah, what policy, is the design, is there any amendment in the design if need be, because it might not be suitable. If you find a location on the seafront, for example, is that going to be acceptable? There's all sorts of issues.
I mean, yeah, in terms of policies, is it a memorial bench?
Yeah.
Just that? Or is it
It's a
going to have a
memorial
function and
bench.
therefore could be considered out with that policy?
Yes.
Could I just clarify, because I've heard the policy described as being in abeyance, or which to my mind means on hold. So are we or are we not working within the policy currently?
Well, applications are being,
just
being
clarification.
turned away, aren't they? But those are applications that have to be maintained by the council. This is different in that
It's paid for someone else.
it is separate and it's going to be supported separately by the people who donate the bench. Is that
Right,
right?
we still need to
Yeah.
look out the
So
tenure of the
But
land.
a bin,
Yeah.
I can't maintain a bin, that's the problem.
So,
No, but
So it would need to be more.
Yeah.
right, so that's the point we need
So
to have
I think we need
clarified.
to
It's the tenure of the land
Yeah.
in relation to assets that are, we have to give permission for them to be built on our land.
Yeah.
All right? That's, we got that? Okay, that's what we clarified.
So the
There's no
proposal.
issue, is there no issue on location then?
No, it is,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's an
Well-
issue, we need suggestions.
Well, there is a design, function and location.
So 2, 3 and 4 basically need to be re-looked at basically, we can't really go further down.
We can't pass the next three.
No, we can't do the next
because we
one.
haven't passed the first one.
Exactly.
Okay, so we will bring this back to a next possible meeting with more specific information about design, function and location. Yeah? Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just say, we do still remember, and it may be helpful maybe when it comes back, the quote that it has already been to community services and was approved. The fact that we didn't know caused quite a lot of discussion, I think, and difficulty at the beginning of this, because I think if we'd all known that, this could have gone a different way, slightly, but it's just that we need information, we need the correct information, and we didn't have that, so we thought this was the first time it was coming to us.
Oh, well, yeah.
Sorry.
Right.
Do you want?
Can
we sort plan out? Thank you. To be continued.
Yeah, someone can let me know what to do next. That'd be really helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for your patience.
Right. Okay, we've still got two more agenda items. So this is agenda item 11, and this is to update the committee on management arrangements for storm board.
So
very important.
Yeah, briefly, there was a relationship with East Sussex County Council that they would place storm boards whenever there was a storm warning. There were a couple of boards that were Seaford Town Council's responsibility to place, which meant officers during the winter particularly spent time checking the weather forecast and running down and putting boards in place. East Sussex has changed its contractors, but in that contractor change there seemed to be a lack of detailed discussion around the storm board responsibility. The first storm occurred and officers worked very late getting the mist storm boards placed, and in fact calling out double glazing specialists to board up all the spaces to protect Seaford. So on the back of that, we had a conversation with the Environment Agency and Lewis District Council and said this really can't carry on. And the Environment Agency is offered to take over the responsibility for the storm boards and to look at the quality of the boards, which are poor at the moment, and to take responsibility for all of the boards. So Seaford officers are no longer responsible for running down the storm boards. Importantly, we discussed as well the problem around boards being removed, being misplaced, and they're going to be, during the winter months, they will be locked in place, so they can't be taken out, but we will be putting notices on the board to explain to the public why the boards are there. There is still access to the beach, but not through those storm boards.
Questions, comments? Councillor Markwell, Councillor Bristow.
Just payment. If they replace them, but they're doing it because they've got the technical expertise to do this, but they're not paying for the boards. We're still going to be paying for the boards. They're going to pay for it.
Everything goes over to
Close
them.
that then.
I was just going to propose it because I thought this was a very good way forward.
Yes.
I
think, to be honest, the Environment Agency were very concerned.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think this is.
And I hadn't realised just how much time is taken up by officers when they have to be looking at storm watches to know. And that is obviously distracting them from their regular work in case they have to make contingency plans in the evening, and that really is a distraction they could do without. Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Again, yes. Right, the signage, so you know where the nearest one is that going to be seasonal, taken away in the summer months when they disappear off, or how's that going to work, the actual signage, so you know where the nearest place to cross over is?
So the signage is about the boards.
So the signage on the boards?
On the boards, because
so you know where the nearest crossover is, was only, so do we get to work?
Well, they're going
at the moment it doesn't work because people just guess, don't they?
Yeah, well, and also they're taking the boards. So this is the whole thing is the management of the boards themselves, and it helps, I think, if you inform. And at the moment there is no information.
So it could be a different design possibly to whatever within the gap. So that would be overall it should be better anyway. Okay, so I'm for it. I'll second you.
Okay. Any more comments or questions? No. Can I have a proposal for this?
We had it.
Oh, sorry.
It's already been done.
Yeah, we've done it.
Proposed.
Already done it.
Yes, okay. And second, Councillor Richard Heineman. Yeah. All those in favour?
Is everyone chat?
Okay. Right. Last item. Okay. Right. This is temporary arrangements for the lifeguard hut to provide an update on temporary arrangements on Seaford Seafront.
Yeah, so the background is that there is no agreement with the lifeguards at all at the moment, and so we want to create a memorandum of understanding where we work in partnership. We have for this summer looked at how we can make space for the lifeguards and offered various accommodation or locations which the lifeguards at the moment are finding that are not as they would like them. And what we're trying to do is break down the conversation into let's get through the summer, which gives us the whole of the winter, to then look at a more permanent location. Part of the problem is that they want fresh running water, and that is certainly the groundworks for Martello toilets was about 20,000 to get that fresh running water and get the electricity. So it's this update is really to say that we're working to look at a temporary offer with a longer term approach, and the lifeguards have come up with some ideas as well. It'll have to go to the Environment Agency for permissions, and it's also about getting services to the hut.
Why can't we give them the janitor store as it was originally planned? Because one of the residents said.
Sorry?
The janitor store, why can't you give them that as it was suggested, as it was originally planned?
So the janitor store in the new Martello toilets is about the size of a sort of the size of a toilet.
It's not big enough.
Yeah, it's a toilet. It's not big enough.
Can I just quickly ask, just out of curiosity, so this fresh water supply, would those big drums of water not suffice?
So
you know the ones you get delivered, the big.
Yes.
So not having a tap, but having a big.
Yeah. So there are lots of solutions to supplying it. It's about reaching an agreement with lifeguards.
Okay, so they are open to other
will
things.
accept.
It's not they have to have like a mains tap.
Well, I think it's the issue they particularly are concerned about is wastewater.
Oh, okay.
So that's also something that's quite complicated.
Yeah.
So it is a complicated problem. We want to get them there for the summer, and we want to come up with a solution where they are then there ongoing.
Sure.
Okay, Councillor Henry.
Yeah, I'd like to say I'm grateful for former Councillor Dunn, who brought up the fact that what was the lifeguard place was mysteriously, well, it was then changed, but we weren't made aware of it. And I hadn't picked it up, and I'm sure others haven't, because it said about the redesign, and I've got the notes from July, I haven't got the 2022, but I've got the notes from the July line 2023, which just says it was low-level sink, janitor store, but when it was done in the, I think it was January part as was picked up, it clearly said the lifeguard store. So what my concern is why were we not made aware of that change? Why were, as councillors, we were not made aware? Because then we would have picked this. I missed that had been a change. So my concern is why were we not made aware in the reports that changes had been made? Because when I looked to see, I can't see anything in here and said, well, actually, the lifeguard station has now had to change into the janitor bit. That wasn't made aware of us. And I also am really concerned that something like the lifeguards, who are really important to the seafront, which they should, again, I've obviously missed that assist and so with others, that we should have made sure that they were made included in this design. So I apologise to the lifeguards for not realising that we should have been more aware of them needing to be there, because I suppose we just assumed they would be there and included, and I missed that, and obviously others have missed that. So it's really, they do a lot of work, they do a lot of voluntary work for the town, they're there covering all the weekends when they can, they do a lot of hard work, and I'm really cross with myself that I missed this, that we should have been aware of this. I know I keep repeating myself, but it is nearly 10:30. So I really would like to see then, because obviously they've got the summer coming up now, they do need running water, they need access to the toilet. So is there any way we can slot them in, or if it's not this end, is whether they can be somewhere else, that they can have the facilities that they require, because they are volunteers and they need to be looked after.
Councillor Mark.
Yeah, so I echo what you say. I have spoken to Peter about it. I know you have, Louise, and so I think there's an issue of trust that's going on at the moment, and I think they were enormously disappointed because this kind of crashed. And once we were where we were when it did, so that was, we had to go forward. The offers that haven't been made haven't been accepted. They haven't been accepted on quite a lot of different levels, but one of the levels is that they're quite worried that because they were overseen before, they kind of feel if they're given something that's semi-permanent, they'll just be left with that semi-permanence, and we'll manage to let it slip off our agenda for another 2 years, and they won't get the permanent place they really want. So I think there is something about building trust. I'm very happy to help and be in a meeting with them if you think it will help. I've got a good relationship with them. I know Linda has, I know others have. We need to build their trust back up, and it feels almost like we need to build the trust up before they're then going to possibly take forward your suggestions. They have technical engineering issues about some of the suggestions. They've also got some very innovative ideas about rolling things around the beach and stuff. I've been talking to them. But we have got to go forward now, and we've got the summer in front of us. So I think this is an incredibly big priority in terms of building that communication back up. I'm offering my help if you want it, and I'm sure others will as well. But let's just talk behind the scenes about maybe how we can get that back on track, because this really does need to be sorted out very, very soon now. And it's just disappointing, but I kind of get it from both sides. We just try and do what we can.
So, any more questions, comments?
I'd just like to say that I support the reflection, Olivia's, Councillor Hanneman's reflections, and also Councillor Markwell, thank you.
It's 10:30.
I'm about to go.
Yes.
I'm going to leave the room in a minute. I see that we're only being asked to note this at this point, but I think we really need to note these points. Actually.
Can I just say one thing, Chair, if that's all right? No, I mean, obviously there was a lot of changes near the end of that, and a lot of stuff was delegated back to officers to do with that final toilet situation, as you know. But it did look as though the lifeguards unfortunately did overlook them for one reason or other. I'm sure it wasn't done intentionally, but there we are. It's done now, isn't it?
Okay, so can I have a proposer to note the contents of the report? Proposed Richard Hanneman, second Councillor Meek. Thank you. All in favour to note the report? Okay, thank you. Meeting closed at 22:28.